In this video, I'm going to take 35 characters from The Rookie, and I'm going to talk about them in order from the most good to the most evil, as well as tackle some morally gray characters in the middle. There are a few characters that are basically perfect, so those need to be knocked out first. I would say the most good character on the entire show is Luna Gray. She's wonderful to literally everybody that she meets. She's thoughtful, she's kind, and she goes out of her way to do the right thing. Even in the case of Season 8, Episode 1, Checkmate, from a moral standpoint, she was doing the right thing for Christian Lobo's health and rights. I don't think there is a more pure character in the show than Luna, but there's a couple that get pretty close. Next up, we have Captain Zoe Anderson. Captain Anderson, like Luna Gray, made sure that she did right by everybody. Even Nolan, when he was ostracized by the rest of his superiors, she was 100% serious with him and valued him unlike anyone else. Not Bishop, not Gray, nobody ahead of him on the chain of command. And she looked out for her team every chance she got, no matter how big or how small. She valued her rookies as much as she did her sergeants and didn't give anyone special treatment. It's a shame that we lost her so early, because having characters like her would brighten up the show so much more. Now we're moving on to Aaron Thorson, and once again, I don't think he's done anybody wrong. He uses his fame and fortune for good, like in Season 5, Episode 1, Double Down, when he ordered a private jet when they couldn't get their hands on the LAPD plane to go after Roy, or like in Season 5, Episode 21, Going Under, when the LAPD needed info in order to identify a suspect for a robbery case. While Perry initially didn't want to help, he agreed and gave him the valuable information after Aaron made a clip talk video with him. Moving on to Kojo. He's just a good boy. Sure, he tore up Lucy's apartment that one time before giving him the Tim, but come on, he's just a dog and didn't know any better. He should obviously be forgiven for this because he's a good boy. Coming up next, we have Miles Penn. I think he's an overall stand-up guy who really values doing things the right way. Even if he made some mistakes earlier on in Season 7, he's made sure to correct any mistakes that he makes, and he's willing to learn. He is a great influence on Tim as well, and I can tell that Tim is respecting him more and more as his training continues. So yes, while he's made some pretty careless mistakes, they didn't really affect anyone directly, and he's never pushed back after being told to knock something off. Angela Lopez is up next, and I think she's the best person of the OG main cast. She goes out of her way any chance she gets to protect the people that she loves, especially her husband. She doesn't take anyone's crap, but she doesn't burn bridges either. She can make friends with almost anybody, and she does. If there's one person on the OG cast you want on your side and as a friend, it's gotta be Angela. Next, I have Wesley Evers, Lopez's husband. Initially, he was annoying and a know-it-all, but he really started to redeem himself with how selfless he could be for the people he cares about. Similarly, if not more than Lopez. And he's changed his entire career to help the little guy and prevent injustice on an individual level. He stands for what's right and takes action. Now we move on to Skip Tracer Randy. And I get it. Some people find him very annoying, and he's a controversial character in the fanbase, but you can't say that he isn't a good person. He fumbles a lot, like at the murder scene on the phone with Nolan and Harper, but in the end, he tries his best to do what's best, and he does care about his friends very much, even if they don't feel the same way with him. On to Lieutenant Wade Gray now. I think he's a good leader, and he cares for his officers and other subordinates. However, I think his animosity towards Nolan in the beginning of the show does show that he has a weakness with his leadership. He is very quick to judge someone, and this can be to his and his officers' detriments. But overall, he's great towards his wife and those that he's close to, like Tim and now Nolan. Raj Bronson. While I personally don't like his character, he's a pretty good guy overall. He's got some obvious flaws though, like the music that he writes about other people. This music gets on people's nerves and makes them not like him, but he's not doing that on purpose. That's why he's still pretty decently in the good category. Selena Juarez is up next, and this is another character that had to have a redemption. Her biggest drawbacks were near her initial appearance, as her mistakes did affect people, and she did push back with Nolan since she did end up being right about the case. However, nowadays, she is selfless and helps others in any way she can or is allowed to. And I think now that she's a P2, everyone else has been more willing to take her help. So I think she's gonna rise on this list throughout season 8. Now let's talk about Smitty. He's not a bad person by any means, though his laziness is not a very good trait to have when being a police officer. However, I think springing the $900 HOA on Miles was also not a good thing to do, since he knows Miles' financial situation at this time. Coming up is Chastity Sneed, and while she's not a bad person either, she's done some questionable things in a legal sense. Most of this is as an accomplice of another character on this list, so I'm going to save that for later, and she gets to be above that person. Next up is Lucy Chen, and I think that she's a pretty good character, though I am going to falter on her role in the Chenford Will They Won't They in the last season. She wasn't ready for Tim and her to get back together yet, and rightfully so. However, she intentionally strung him along, like in April Fool's with the fake intimacy as the biggest example. Though there's some other smaller ones. She also low-key emotionally cheated on Chris by agreeing to a date with Tim while still with Chris. Yikes. Wrapping up the good characters section, we have Nyla Harper. She is on the border of good, because while she's like Lopez in the sense that she now would do anything for her family and friends, her previous neglect of her family while she worked undercover cannot be ignored. You have to understand how massive of a blunder this was, and for how long. And I'm not surprised it took years to work those relationships back. Without this, she could have been higher on this list. I hope y'all understand where I'm coming from here. Now, on to the morally gray section. Starting out, we have Grace Sawyer. The work she does as a doctor is commendable, saving lives and all that. However, she was low-key leading Nolan on when she was still technically with her husband, and then she randomly drops him to go back to her husband. It's not cheating per se, but it's probably the closest thing to it. Emotional cheating maybe, like Lucy? I don't know. Next up, we have John Nolan. He prides himself on being the best cop he can be, and in 99% of the cases, he is. But when rubber hits the road, that 1% trips him up. He is complicit in the cover-up of another character's conspiracy of murder, which we will be covering later. This cannot be ignored, even if it was a hard choice for him to make. I hope this comes back up later in the show. Chris Sanford. Oh, Chris Sanford. Basically, Wesley if Wesley was a careless boyfriend. Even if it was unwillingly, he brought back his own girlfriend's trauma in a pretty crazy way.
You okay?
He knew Lucy was there. He knew it was harmful to her, but still was careless and hummed it in her presence. Maybe I'm being too harsh on him here? Let me know in the comments. Coming up next, we're talking about Tamara Collins. Tamara is great with Lucy, and she is a great addition to the show, but she did steal Lucy's car and was kind of a brat to her in the beginning, despite Lucy trying to help. I get she was in a bad place, but stealing a car is not the answer to that problem. At least it led to something better though, and I hope they bring her back more often. Remember when I mentioned Chastity earlier? Here's her main man, Pete Nolan. He stole John's inherited car twice. Then add in all the smaller mischievous things that he does involving John, and you've got a tornado of disaster. I don't think he intentionally wants to hurt John or anyone else, but if I knocked Tamara down for stealing a car once, he needs to be further down for doing it twice. Jackson West is the next one on our list, and while he wanted to be a good cop, I don't think he entirely was. His work involving getting rid of Doug, who we'll get back to later, was good, but his season 1 screw-ups need to be highlighted. When any sort of competition or goal is in place, Jackson throws a lot of morality out the window to do so, especially with the episode The Checklist.
Bingo.
It took a long time to get to Tim Bradford, but we're finally here. His treatment of his rookies sometimes can be seen as overboard, as there are times where the tough act is ineffective, and he's doing it purely to keep up said act. And we can't forget about season 6, when he made that vow to kill Ray and almost went through with it before ultimately not doing so at the last minute. And then he lied about his stunt to IA to save his own ass. I talked about how Nolan had covered up for someone else's conspiracy to murder, and that was Bailey Noon, his wife. She's like Grace, where she saves lives, and that is commendable. However, she's also attempted to help end one too. She sent Malvado where Jason was in order for him to kill Jason. Even though she ultimately wasn't correct about it, the intention was there, and then to rope Nolan in and basically back him into a corner where he had to agree was a pretty evil act. Her good actions are the only reason she's in the moral gray category. Jessica Russo. Of course, this comes down to the nature of her kill in the season 1 finale and whether or not it was justified. Did he really pop out and was about to shoot them? Or did she shoot when there was no danger? The show makes it incredibly confusing to know what the true answer was, but I lean towards the latter. Now to round up the morally gray section. Seth Ridley is at the bottom of this section because while his actions truly seem compulsory and not on purpose, his lies have led to catastrophic results. Like when Tim and Lucy were stuck in the fire because he covered his own ass for his mistake on not calling in the road. He had nothing to gain from his other lies either, other than showing how untrustworthy he really is. However, his sacrifice to save Nolan is the only reason he scraped by in the morally gray section. Let's start on our evil characters now. Doug Stanton is at the top of the evil characters, and that's because he's just plain racist, not even subtly either. He clearly has it out for anyone who isn't white, whether they're black, Hispanic, what have you. And he let Jackson get beat nearly to death. He is not a good person in the slightest. Malvado is up next. He's a hitman, so obviously he kills a lot of people. But the only reason I have him so high up in the evil category is because he is a hitman and not your average serial killer. He wouldn't kill if there wasn't a large amount of money involved, and he sees it purely as work. Even if the action is evil, the intention gave him a couple of brownie points. He also killed Jason, who was a terrible person too, even if we're not putting him on this list. La Fiera is the least evil of our long-term villains. Most of her evil actions that we see on screen come from her reaction to her son's death. And while that doesn't excuse any of those actions, not even 1%, it shines a light on her, allowing the audience to at least understand what was going on in her head when she was doing them, unlike some of the other characters further down. Next up is Nick Armstrong. He was a mole and was happy to work with some terrible people that put his fellow officers in danger, which, again, we talk about later. And then everything he did to Nolan at the tail end of his run was diabolical, planting all the drugs on Nolan to get rid of him, then attempting to kill him at the end. What a waste of a character arc. As much as I hate Monica Stevens, she is not the furthest down on this list. She has put a lot of lives in danger to better her own life, and she aligns herself with some other terrible people. But I have some other stone cold people underneath her that I think are worse, due to her actions being indirect, and their direct actions are pure evil. We have Elijah Stone up next. I think he's Monica, but with a few qualities that are more evil. He's willing to be more direct with his evilness, like how he directly hired someone to go kill Wesley, and he went out of his way to make Wesley and Lopez's lives a living hell. Also, he was going to kill Lopez himself, so let's throw that in there. Oscar Hutchinson, my favorite villain, is one extremely evil person. He is an opportunist that will literally do anything to get ahead, even murder people. Big example, his kidnapping and attempted murder of Nolan in the season 7 finale. The only reason I don't have him lower is because there's 3 people below him that are truly despicable, evil serial killers. Coming up, we have Caleb Wright, the puppet serial killer of one of the other 2 people we're gonna talk about. His MO is to kidnap people, take them out in the middle of nowhere, and to suffocate them in barrels after tattooing their date of death on their body. He's twisted in the head and deserves this spot. Liam Glasser is our second most evil character, and of course he's gonna be down here. He is a serial killer, one with some pretty cruel tendencies. He literally had a guy tied up in a shower with needles injected all over him. That, and while we don't have confirmation through the show, I think it's pretty obvious that he did the wildfires. Let's be real. And now, for our most evil character in the show, Rosalind Dyer. She's the one that enlists people like Caleb Wright. She's a serial killer and one that's killed numerous people and hidden their bodies. Then, when she gets thrown in jail, she gets others to kill for her. And then when she breaks out of jail, her dying quest is to try and ruin Nolan's life. She is stone cold. And with that, those are the most good to most evil characters of The Rookie. Across 8 seasons of the show, The Rookie has had many villains come and go. A lot of them are one-time villains that are thwarted and then never seen again. But what about the ones that made a massive impact on the show and its characters? Today, we're going to talk about every prominent villain on The Rookie, a bit of their story, and talk about what happened to them. I'm going to go in order of when they first appeared on the show. And who was the first main villain? It's our golden boy, Oscar Hutchinson. He was introduced in Season 1, Episode 15, Manhunt, as one of the escaped prisoners from the prison bus crash. He also happens to have the most extensive history out of any villain in the show, as up until Season 7, he is the only villain to have been in every single season. Before the show, he was in prison for decades, and he told Lopez and Jackson that he expected to be in there for the rest of his life. However, Lopez said that he was serving 40 years at Cal Correctional, so if he had just behaved himself, he wouldn't be spending the rest of his life there. Anyways, while taking him back in, Oscar takes the opportunity to mess with Jackson's mind a bit and tells him about the past stories involving Percy, his father. He implied that Percy was involved in some shady business, and that caused doubt in Jackson's mind about his dad. Luckily, this didn't last long, and they cleared the air. For the seasons afterwards, he became Nolan's arch nemesis, appearing multiple times throughout Season 2, including in the court during the missile alert, as well as the Scared Straight program during the episode Under the Gun. He also appears multiple times involving his daughter Ashley, once in Season 3, and again in Season 5, but in his last appearance, the Season 7 finale, he is at his worst. He kidnaps Nolan and drags him into the middle of nowhere to find a stash of diamonds that he needs. They find the diamonds, and Oscar is about to kill him until Harper and the drone kid foil that plan. Unfortunately, before being able to grab Oscar, he hitches a ride from a helicopter and is flown away. This is where his story is currently left off, and we don't know what happens to him in Season 8 yet, other than him being in custody during the trailer. I guess we'll have to see. Now that we got Oscar out of the way, the rest aren't as extensive. Next up, we have Nick Armstrong, introduced in Season 2, Episode 2, The Night General, as a detective. Initially, he becomes buddies with Nolan due to their age. He actually seemed like he was going to be a good role model for Nolan, helping him be able to navigate the rest of his training period. We learn a lot about him. His wife died 5 years ago because of cancer, and one of his biggest regrets is spending too much time on the Rosalind Dyer case before his wife died. We'll be talking about her later. However, at the end of Season 2, he was revealed to be a dirty cop who was supplying department secrets to a gang. Nolan found out about this and confronted him, but Nolan didn't know what Nick's previous methods of covering this up were: murdering cops. But Nick had another idea: frame Nolan and send him away. But in order to save Nolan and Harper's asses, Nolan had to wear a wire to infiltrate the gang in order to make a deal with them. Nick planned to kill him here, but the gang set Nick up, and he was killed in the crossfire by the gang. He briefly is mentioned every once in a while going forward, but obviously since he's dead, he is never seen again. Now I'm going to give you a kind of 2-for-1 deal. Next up is Rosalind Dyer and Caleb Wright by extension. She was introduced in Season 2, Episode 10, The Dark Side, and so was Caleb. Rosalind Dyer is the most ruthless and soulless serial killer that the show has ever introduced to the show, so much so that even though she was in prison, she had these puppet killers that would kill people in her honor, one of which being Caleb Wright. Caleb is first introduced as a potential love interest for Lucy, and Rosalind is introduced in the middle of the episode. She was allowed out of prison as part of a deal to recover the bodies of who she killed. Though while out there, she took a liking to Nolan, and this sticks for her entire run. Back to Caleb though. At the end of the episode, he and Lucy go out for drinks, and he drugs her and takes her back to a house in the middle of nowhere, where he planned to kill her by suffocating her in a barrel after tattooing her date of death to her body. And when she tries to escape this fate, he one-ups his plan and buries said barrel in the ground, where nobody would find her. Luckily, Lucy is saved here by Tim and everyone else, but it was a close call. It's found out that he was a proxy killer to Rosalind, as well as Nick Armstrong and a few others were under her belt. And in her last appearance in Season 5's episode, The Choice, she knew she wasn't going to be free for much longer after her escape, as everyone in the city was looking for her. So she devised the most evil exit plan that someone could come up with. Trap Bailey in a death trap, force Nolan to meet with her, and have him take the gun that she gives him, and he can either shoot Rosalind right then and there to stop the contraption from killing Bailey, or he can sit and watch her die. Nolan surprisingly doesn't shoot her and instead arrests her. But as they go outside to his shop, Rosalind is sniped and killed. This was part of her plan in case it went awry. She would have died either way. But we don't find this out unless we watch the Rookie Feds, as the plot was continued in the episode To Die For. While she's ruthless and will never be forgotten, she'll never return either. And the reason for this quick ending was due to Annie Wersching's declining health leading up to the episode, so they wrote this up to kill off such a notorious character. This was the right call, as she would pass away a few months later. Rest in peace. This next one isn't necessarily a villain, more of an antagonist. However, I think he's still worth mentioning. Doug Stanton was introduced in Season 3, Episode 2, Injustice, as Jackson's new training officer. For the first half of the episode, it seems like he's going to be a good fit for Jackson. He was a family man who wanted to give Jackson some room to spread his wings. However, this was not the case, as his racist side immediately started coming out after they went to their first call involving a black family, immediately assuming the kid was in a gang, asking if the family owed anyone money, etc. But this isn't the worst thing that he did. There was a bolo out for a black man who was 6 foot in a blue jacket. They found a 5'6" man in a green jacket, and Doug immediately tackles and arrests him. Then, when the family came out, he pointed his gun at all of them. This only de-escalated after Tim showed up and defused the situation, saying that they already found the guy. Doug eventually caught on that Jackson was out to get him, and would make his training as horrible as possible, setting him up on loyalty tests like the one involving the teenager in Season 3, Episode 4. He made it look like he was gonna beat the kid if Jackson didn't come save him. Then, in Episode 5, they follow a stolen Land Rover, and Jackson gets beaten half to death by the criminals that they followed. And instead of Doug helping him, he stood back and watched. They found this out on the body cam, and Doug was fired. Well, until later in the season in Episode 13, Triple Duty, when it's found out that he got back on and was transferred to the Hollywood division. Gray and Jackson reach out to his new watch commander, and they humiliate him in front of the entirety of his new division. It's unknown if he got fired after that, since this was his last appearance, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was. I'm glad that we never have to see him in police work again. Let's move on to Sandra de la Cruz, aka La Fiera, who was introduced in Season 3, Episode 3, appropriately titled La Fiera. She was a major drug trafficker who was from Guatemala, and she was brought into the show after Lopez was investigating the death of one of La Fiera's men. In the episode, we find out about the massacre that La Fiera instigated that left a Guatemalan cop wanting revenge after his children were killed during it. The cop's partner went after La Fiera and her son Diego, and Lopez had to get them somewhere safe until the partner was arrested. He was, and Lopez let them go. This was the start of a strained, yet interestingly wholesome relationship between La Fiera and Lopez, as when Lopez got home, there was a charm given by La Fiera to protect her unborn child. However, this turned for the worse after Diego was shot and killed in Season 3, Episode 12, Brave Heart. She went rogue, and even though Lopez tried to assist, La Fiera was already spiraling. At the end of the season, she kidnaps Lopez and Jackson. Jackson is killed pretty quickly, and Lopez is taken to Guatemala, where the LAPD have to go and save her. La Fiera's plan was to let Lopez live in luxury until the baby was born and then kill her, but this was thwarted after everyone came to her rescue, though it was a close battle and barely worked. On Lopez's way to the helicopter, being chased by La Fiera, who is shooting her way, she turns around and shoots La Fiera twice, leaving her dead on the metal fence, never to be seen again. Coming up next in Season 4, Episode 1, Life and Death, we have Elijah Stone. He actually was part of the reason that Lopez was saved from La Fiera, as he gave the location of La Fiera to Wesley. However, this came at a cost. Wesley had to become Elijah's crooked lawyer and get him out of trouble. Wesley tries to do this while staying within the limits of the law, but it isn't working very well. And as Elijah piled on threat after threat of hurting his family, Wesley had enough and told Lopez about the situation. They tried to implicate him with Wesley wearing a wire, but that didn't work. However, in episode 9, Breakdown, he's finally arrested after Abril Rodas, La Fiera's right-hand woman, was able to ambush his crew because of what he did to La Fiera. We didn't see him again until season 5, episode 6, The Reckoning, as he got himself a new crooked lawyer to get him out of trouble, Monica Stevens, who we'll talk about more later in the video. She gets him out of trouble since the DA's case wasn't good enough, and he's set free, where he starts going after Wesley and Lopez, doing everything he can to ruin their lives. And he temporarily does ruin Wesley's life, as he gets Wesley barred and he's forced to apologize to him in a press conference. But after enough time of Lopez trying to go after Elijah again, she finds out about a deal involving Elijah and Abril, which is strange given what happened earlier, but I digress. She and Harper decide to ambush this deal. Elijah almost kills Harper, but Lopez interrupts him and they start fighting. This gave Harper enough time to get back up, and they took him down and arrested him. But he was not done yet. He sent a hitman after Wesley, though thanks to his new security guard, Charlie Bristow, the hitman was unsuccessful. Elijah is taken to prison, where he meets Oscar, and it seems like they're gonna get along. This is the last that we've seen or heard from him in the show. However, he's set to come back in season 8, so we'll have to see what happens with his storyline being picked back up, and whether Oscar is a part of that or not. Before we get to Monica though, there was one villain introduced before her, and that was Jason Weiler, Bailey's ex-husband, introduced in season 4, episode 9, Breakdown. Before the show, Jason was extremely abusive towards Bailey. In Oscar Hutchinson's own words, he gets satisfaction from making women feel little in order to make himself feel big, as he is highly insecure about himself. The introduction was super quick, as Bailey lets him know that Nolan is with her now, and that she wants a divorce. He initially says he would do so, but he backs down from this and says he wants to reconcile. When she says no, he feels humiliated. So what's his next course of action? Plant coke in her car. Though this was found out, and while he was taken into custody, Jason cuts a deal and lets them know about the Southern Front's money laundering scheme. Unfortunately for him, he breaks this deal after assaulting Nolan and gets 8 years behind bars. Or does he? Well, in season 6, episode 10, Escape Plan, Oscar gives him the opportunity to break out of jail. He isn't interested at first, but he found out that Nolan and Bailey got married and he saw red. Monica Stevens supplies them with uniforms and a car to slip out of prison, and Nolan and Bailey are notified immediately about this. He is out to get Bailey and kill her for marrying Nolan, as it was a betrayal in his eyes. He captures her after hitting her with his car, takes her, and is about to kill her. But Malvado, a hitman for the Southern Front, snipes him and he is killed in cold blood. This is where his story and Bailey's torture ends. Now we can talk about Monica Stevens. She was introduced in season 5, episode 6, The Reckoning, as Elijah's crooked lawyer and Wesley's ex-fiance. This doesn't last very long though, as in the episode The Enemy Within, he threatens her and a sort of switch flips, where while initially she lied about where Abril and Elijah's deal was, she told them where they actually were last minute. For the rest of season 5, we don't see much from her, outside of an appearance in episode 20, STR. However, this is far from her last appearance. She's back in season 6, and as the season continues, she starts to build her empire, building deals with high-level criminals and gang lords. She goes from a crooked lawyer to a super rich cartel leader, a force to truly be reckoned with, and by the end of the season, she has a lot of people under her, including Blair London, a therapist for the LAPD who was later revealed to be recording all of the sessions to give Monica serious intel about the department. When this is found out, she kidnaps Blair London and takes her to Argentina after supplying the escape of Jason and Oscar for the info they got while in prison. She was going to dispose of Blair to a Swiss trafficker. However, Nolan ambushes their deal and retrieves her. Nolan also tries to shoot after Monica, but she narrowly escapes, where she will continue to make their lives hell in season 7. She was in hiding, planning to get some valuable intel to save her. She teamed up with a woman named Denise in episode 11, Speed, where Denise manages to steal a government official's keycard, and Monica was able to grab the contents of that card. She uses this as leverage to grant her total immunity in the season 7 finale for the crimes that she committed, And then in the season 8 premiere, as part of this immunity deal, Nolan, Monica, and Bailey head to Prague to take down a major trafficker that she had ties to. In this episode, she tells them that she's broke after hiding for so long, and on the plane ride back, she is given a $100,000 piece of jewelry since it was a legal purchase, in which she will have to use to get back on her feet and live legally. I'm not sure if this will be the last that we see of Monica. I think she'll come back, but it'll likely be on a smaller scale than we have seen her since her introduction. And now for our most recent long-term villain, we have Liam Glasser, introduced in Season 7, Episode 5, Till Death. After investigating the serial killings of Harrison Novak in the previous episode, they find bodies that didn't belong to Harrison, and he made it very clear that he has nothing to do with them. Harper suspects that Liam is the second killer, and she confronts him, though he seems unfazed by this. He returns in Episode 8, Wildfire, when Lucy, Selena, and Harper are all on a trail following him. Around the corner is the wildfire, and while Liam fakes helping up a person who fell over, he taunts Harper on his way down. He evacuates with his family, but once they get to the center, Liam leaves to quote-unquote check on the warehouse that he runs. The LAPD tracks his location and finds where he was housing his next victim. And while Liam tries to attack Nolan here, Harper gets him down and arrests him. He is mentioned as the person who bought the slandering billboards in episode 13, 3 Billboards, and makes a brief appearance in the documentary episode, A Deadly Secret. But otherwise, he's just been in prison since episode 8. However, he's also said to come back this season, so we'll just have to see where he leads us. Anyways, that is all of the prominent villains and what happened to them. Romance is a massive part of The Rookie. The drama, the build-up, the makeout scenes, everything that people love. But exactly how many relationships were there on the show? Today, I'm going to talk about every relationship on The Rookie that involved at least one main character. Every single one. Let's start off with all of the relationships that Lucy Chen has had, because I know that most people would be interested in that. First up, we have another main character, John Nolan. And this relationship spanned from the pilot episode all the way to season 1, episode 4, The Switch, with an extra little tidbit later on. When the pilot episode first started out, the show tried to make it seem like they weren't together, as they were in the bar and that woman went up to Nolan and Lucy identified it. But then they decided to drop the bombshell that no, the two rookies are dating. And there was a lot of pushback from Bishop about this, as if this relationship went public, Lucy's reputation would be branded. Is it against the rules? Well, no, but nobody would respect Lucy and the work that she's doing to become a cop. And eventually, both Nolan and Lucy decide to split for that reason in The Choice. However, in episode 8, they do hook up again after the killing incident with Nolan. This pairing was extremely controversial, and fans are glad that they killed this pairing off as quickly as they did. The next relationship of hers that we are going to talk about is Emmett Lang, which took place at the end of season 2, with it spilling over into season 3. While on a call, Emmett meets Lucy, and we find out that Emmett is actually Tim's friend, and they end up sleeping together and getting into a relationship. However, the boat starts to rock in season 2, episode 19, The Q Word, when she and Tim are arguing, and Emmett stands up for her and tries to break up the argument. However, Lucy wasn't happy with this and told him that she didn't need defended. This was not good for their relationship, and in season 3, episode 8, Bad Blood, he breaks up with her over text. Ouch. Her third relationship that we're going to talk about was with Chris Sanford, which went on throughout season 4 and the first half of season 5. Chris is an assistant district attorney who meets Lucy on a case in the season 4 episode Heartbeat, where they're on the opposite sides of the fence of each other. She sees the young man that they're convicting as redeemable, whereas he doesn't. They did not like each other in Heartbeat, but as time went on, they began to warm up to each other and realized they have a bit in common. But then, when the double date opportunity with Tim and Ashley came up, they took it. This date was awkward. They basically just told inside stories the whole time and left Ashley and Chris feeling left out. But Lucy calls for a do-over date, and they go. This is the start of their very rocky relationship that lasts for almost the whole next season. I say rocky because there were a lot of interesting moments. One big one being when he hummed the song Lucy sang in the barrel as he had just watched the footage from that day.
You okay?
I'm so sorry.
But on the sidelines, another relationship was starting to brew. I did not finish Chris's segment because we need to talk about the start of the Chenford saga with Lucy and Tim. Their official relationship has two parts, one from seasons 5 and 6, and then the next in season 8. However, their beginnings start quite before that, where due to their undercover mission involving Dim and Juicy, they had to learn to pretend being a couple. They kissed, then they made out, then they... You know what? Are we sure that they were pretending? Anyways, they started to wonder if they really had the hots for each other. And they did. Tim asks Lucy out in season 5, episode 8, The Caller, to which she immediately says yes, but then she realizes that she hadn't broke up with Chris yet. Oh, the drama. So then Lucy broke up with Chris in the next episode, and they go out on their first official date, which leads to them fully getting together. They're happy and healthy together until season 6, episode 6, Secrets and Lies, where due to Tim's vow situation, he decides he's not in the place to be dating Lucy right now and breaks up with her. This breaks her heart, and after a while, he realizes that he made a mistake. Over the course of the next season and a half, he tries to win her trust and feelings back. And while this slowly does happen, Lucy doesn't fully trust him to not break her heart again. But in season 8, episode 1, Checkmate, Tim truly apologizes and offers for her to move in with him as a sign of how truly serious he is. Enough time had passed for her, and she agreed. And as of episode 4, when I'm writing this video, they are still happily together and working out the complications of being moved in with each other. Let's move on to the relationships of Angela Lopez. Or should I say relationship, because there's only one. And it's with the one and only Wesley Evers. Their relationship started in season 1, episode 10, Flesh and Blood, and have been together ever since. In Flesh and Blood, they butted heads throughout nearly the entire episode, but at the end, Wesley invites her out on a date, and she agrees. And ever since, they have been happy and healthy. While they've had some rocky instances in their relationship, none of those instances were with each other, rather fighting against something or someone else as a team. A couple examples of this are when Lopez gets kidnapped by La Fiera and had to be saved in the season 4 premiere, Life and Death, as well as when Wesley was being threatened and tortured by Elijah Stone throughout seasons 4 and 5. Speaking of Life and Death, they also got married in this episode, even if they had planned to have it in the previous episode in the season 3 finale, Threshold. That's actually the episode where the La Fiera kidnapping took place. But overall, this relationship is the healthiest in the show that started during the show's run. I make that distinction because of a couple we'll talk about later. Moving on to our next character, we are going to talk about all of the Tim Bradford relationships throughout the show. We have to start off with the relationship that already was technically ongoing at the beginning of the series, which is him and Isabel that went on from the pilot until season 1, episode 12, Heartbreak. Isabel and Tim were cops that got together and then got married. She was in gangs and narcotics for most of her career, which ended up slowly sending her down a rabbit hole of actual drug use and later addiction. This strained Tim and her relationship to where they had to physically separate from one another, despite still being legally married. However, in Heartbreak, Tim decided that in the spirit of Valentine's Day, he was gonna ask her for a divorce. Wait, that doesn't sound very romantic. But Isabel agrees and thanks him for never giving up on her, ending their marriage on a very amicable note. Moving on, we have the relationship that Tim had with Rachel Hall, Lucy's friend from season 2, episode 3, The Bet, all the way until the season finale. She was part of a bet that Lucy made in order to get short sleeves, where she would set Tim up on one good date. Tim accepts and he and Rachel go out. While Lucy and Jackson are stalking the date, it seems like the date is going awful, as she even slaps him as she gets up. However, the next day, when Lucy came over, she found out that they had slept together, and this was the start of their relationship. They were actually pretty cute throughout the season, sharing a lot of little moments with Lucy being a part of them every once in a while. But at the end of the season, she tells Tim that she has to move to New York City in order to get her dream job. They initially agreed to try and make long distance work since Tim wasn't ready to jump ship and move for her. But this doesn't end up lasting and they break up off screen. Kinda sad, honestly. And now we need to talk about his and Ashley McGrady's relationship that took place throughout season 4 that ended at the front end of season 5. She first appears in season 4, episode 6, Poetic Justice, as the daughter of Jerry McGrady, a cop who was on the force for decades before retiring at the end of the episode. There was mutual connection between Tim and Ashley, and in episode 12, The Knock, they started dating. This doesn't last long, however, because in season 5, episode 5, The Fugitive, Ashley breaks up with Tim after the talks about him retiring fell on deaf ears. She was always worried about her dad getting hurt and couldn't do that for Tim as well, so she let things go. Coming up next, we're going to talk about all of the relationships that Nyla Harper has had with other characters. I'm going to start with a quick honorable mention to her and Donovan Town. They aren't dating during the show's run, and they divorced well before Nyla's first appearance. However, they do have a quick run-in of sleeping together after having a night of drinks in the season 4 episode ACH. They're on good-ish terms, however, they can't be together. Now I'm going to talk about her one true relationship within the show, which is with James Murray. This relationship has been a thing since season 3, and they're still together today. Their relationship started off extremely rocky, as Nyla was interested in 2 people at the time, James and a guy named Alonzo. She ends up double booking a date with the 2 guys, and they end up finding out by running into each other. They both walk out, and Nyla is left alone in the restaurant. She begs James for another chance though, as she wants him more than Alonzo. He surprisingly agrees, and they give it another shot, which leads to them officially getting together. They end up getting married in season 4, and they've been together ever since, navigating through life, including having a daughter together. That's not to say their relationship hasn't been turbulent though, as they have had a lot of conflicts due to their professions and values involving police work. But hopefully the show can finally give this couple some peace and compromise. That or they get divorced, either way, I'm happy. Lieutenant Gray has only been in one relationship throughout the entire show, and it predates the show by 2 decades. This is with his wife, Luna. They have been rock solid from the beginning of the show all the way to present day. Right now, there's a tiny bit of tension involving their schedules that started to show in the beginning of season 8, but they've been working through that very efficiently and are still doing great to this day. But there's a possible plotline that is coming that is scary to think about, as it involves Luna possibly cheating. I am really hoping they don't hurt their relationship, as they're the only relationship that's lasted the entire show, and I'd really like that not to change. Now we have Selena Juarez's only relationship to talk about next. This is with Raj Bronson, which started in season 7, episode 10, Chaos Agent, and is still ongoing today. Raj hasn't been in a lot of episodes, and this relationship is fairly new, so there isn't a lot to talk about involving their relationship. However, their relationship has been controversial within the fan base, as well as people believe that she deserves a more dynamic partner than Raj, since his actor, Xander Hawley, is a songwriter and not the best actor. We'll just have to see what goes on with them during this season. The Rookie is easily regarded as one of the best modern TV shows in the past 10 years, having an overall average rating of 8.0 stars on IMDb. And today, we are going to be ranking the top 10 greatest episodes in the entire series of The Rookie based on the ratings. Number 10, Season 2, Episode 8, Clean Cut. I understand why this episode is rated as high as it is, considering that it was the introduction of the fan favorite character Elroy Basso. The episode starts with Nolan on the phone with his son, Henry, explaining how his only plan for his upcoming birthday was to re-tile his floor in the bathroom. Nolan then receives a phone call from Sergeant Gray for a mandatory callback, where Nolan has to guard a crime scene until it gets cleared by the detectives. While waiting there, Nolan ends up meeting Elroy Basso, a crime scene cleaner, but Elroy decided to keep John company until it was processed. After a bit, 2 men show up to find the cash that was stashed in the crime scene, where Elroy and Nolan manage to fight them off and escape with 0 injuries. Meanwhile, Lucy and Tim accidentally rear-ended a vehicle while patrolling around. Tim felt terrible as he was the one driving, but Lucy felt like she didn't see any brake lights when it happened. She went to the LAPD repair shop, where a gentleman checked and saw that someone had purposely pulled out the connectors to the brake lights on the vehicle. They went to the hospital to chat with the lady involved in the accident, where she revealed that her and her husband did consistent insurance scams, and told Lucy and Tim that her husband had planned to murder someone's wife for a cut on her life insurance policy. The LAPD busted the husband, and the day was saved. Overall, it was a pretty decent episode, and I'm not surprised that this episode ended up this high on the ratings. Number 9, Season 1, Episode 20, Free Fall, the finale of Season 1. where a deadly man-made virus nearly got unleashed into Los Angeles, and where Talia Bishop had her final appearance in the show. It begins with Nolan and Bishop finding a strangled body inside a bus terminal. Once they ID'd a suspect, the CDC and DHS show up at the scene to alert Nolan and Bishop that their suspect had managed to grow a virus that was going to be used as a terror attack. While they were trying to find and detain the rest of the people behind the virus, Tim ended up coming in contact with one of the victims, who had accidentally taken the bag off the bus and cut himself on the glass vial inside. Tim immediately closed himself into the room alongside the infected man, as he did not want Lucy to get infected as well. While the CDC was waiting for a shipment of the vaccine for Tim, the LAPD found the group who had created the virus. A shootout happens where Jackson and Lopez end up having to shoot one of them. The rest of the LAPD keep searching for the other suspect, and Nolan and Jessica end up finding them. Nolan talked him into lowering his weapon, and as he slowly started walking out of the shed, Jessica ended up shooting him twice in the chest. This ended up being a huge deal to Nolan, but if you want to hear more about Nolan and Jessica's relationship, you can watch my previous video about the rookie couples tier list. Afterwards, the CDC finally showed up with a vaccine for Tim, which seemed to be working for the most part, until the episode ends with Tim's eyes rolling back into his head and him slowly falling over. As for my opinion on this episode, I believe there's a true top contender for one of the highest rated episodes in the show. There was consistent suspense and build up in the episode, and it never felt like there was a dull moment at all. Definitely a top contender and one of my favorite episodes in the entire show. Number 8. Season 1, Episode 9, Standoff. This episode takes place right after the events of Episode 8, Time of Death, where Nolan had shot and killed Alex Montgomery in self-defense. The episode starts with Nolan being held at gunpoint by Kyle Montgomery, Alex's brother. Nolan managed to knock Kyle off balance, wrestling him and taking control of his pistol. While struggling, Lucy pops out of Nolan's bathroom and distracts Kyle, which allows Nolan to kick Kyle off of him and knock him out. Nolan immediately called the police, but Lucy didn't want the police to know about their relationship, especially after she had just lied to Internal Affairs about their relationship together. Lucy ended up leaving the scene while Nolan stayed and waited for the police. Later in the day, Nolan gets sat down by Anderson and Commander West to talk about Alex. He was officially cleared of any charges that could have been placed from the homicide, but a new case was opened for the attack from Kyle. Anderson tells Nolan that it shouldn't be longer than about 2 days, and he was placed on desk duty until the case was closed. Nolan was called into an interrogation room by Commander West, where West was trying to get some clarification. According to West, Kyle claimed that Nolan had lured him into his house to kill him. Nolan immediately clarifies that he did not do that. However, West wasn't done. He had also mentioned that Kyle swore he heard a female voice before being knocked out. Nolan doubles down, claiming that he had SportsCenter on the TV, and tells West that he was 100% alone. West moves on from the voice claim and starts asking Nolan why his shower had been wet. Nolan scrambled and told West that he had been using a shower as a makeshift humidifier due to the desert Los Angeles air. West did not buy this and tells Nolan that the only thing that West could not forgive is dishonesty. Later that night, he was called into Anderson's office alongside Commander West and was told that the case was being closed. John was relieved, but also disappointed that he wasn't able to tell the truth. As for my final opinion on the episode, I do believe it was a good one, but maybe not deserving of a top 10 rating. Number 7. Season 7, Episode 8, Wildfire. The first episode to appear on this list from a later season, and for a good reason. It starts with Lucy, Selena, and Nyla on a hiking trail near Liam Glasser's neighborhood. Nyla has been keeping eyes on Glasser, and she suspects that he may be the notorious serial killer whose body count could be in the dozens. While walking, they all start to smell something burning, and as they get higher, they see a huge forest fire engulfing the hiking trail. The LAPD immediately start to evacuate the surrounding neighborhoods to a local community center, while Nyla still tries her best to keep an eye on Glasser. At the community center, a fight breaks out, which ended up distracting the officers and gives Liam a chance to leave the community center without anyone noticing. They get a location from Liam's wife and immediately start heading over. Meanwhile, Lucy and Tim get a call from Harper asking them to head towards Liam Glasser's location since they are way closer and Harper is stuck in traffic. Tim and Lucy drive onto Eagle Rock Road, where the terrain is fully engulfed in flames. Now you may be wondering, why didn't anyone inform them that Eagle Rock Road was closed? Well, Seth Ridley moment. Tim and Lucy quickly rush away from the shop and use a fire shelter to protect themselves from the approaching flames. Meanwhile, a big group of the LAPD make it to Liam Glasser's location and start searching for him. Nolan and Liam get into a brief fight, but Lopez and Harper come to the rescue, arrest Liam, and take him to Mid-Wilshire. After that, it cuts back to a burned, destroyed forest, with Tim and Lucy emerging from the fire shelter unharmed. So overall, I think this episode absolutely deserves a top 10 rating, and in my personal opinion, maybe even a top 5. But wait, there's one more thing that happened. James was working at the community center during the wildfire, and the final scene showed him getting shot several times in a drive-by shooting. What? Number 6, Season 1, Episode 8, Time of Death. This episode takes place right before the events of Episode 9, Standoff, so I won't go into crazy detail for this one. It starts with Nolan and Bishop getting locked inside of an escape room and having to solve it to escape. Sounds like a pretty normal episode, right? Because even after that, it shows Jackson and Lopez stopping a drunk lady that was carrying around a foot that was chopped off by somebody. You know, normal rookie episode. But then it cuts to Nolan responding to a gas station robbery where two suspects, Alex and Kyle Montgomery, try to rob the cashier. But the cashier had them at gunpoint. They end up running, with Kyle immediately being arrested by Bishop. Nolan started chasing Alex as he ran into a civilian's house, and Nolan kept following and found him in the room with his back turned towards him. Nolan told him to drop the weapon, and the rest of the episode is filled with interviews from internal affairs, and it ends with Nolan spending quality personal time with Lucy, until Kyle breaks into Nolan's house and tries to kill him. It makes total sense why this episode was rated so high, as it was a very tense episode with a lot of action, while still showing the process that the LAPD goes through when it comes to an officer-involved shooting. Number 5, Season 8, Episode 3, The Red Place. This is very likely my favorite episode in the entire show, and had me in awe the entire time. It starts with Nolan arresting a homeless man named Ezra Kane, who had broken into a rec center for quote-unquote finding a place to sleep. He put Ezra in a holding cell like normal and was sitting when Harper ended up calling him over to his desk. After citing Ezra, his fingerprints immediately matched a cold case on a triple homicide 3 years ago in Oregon. He had killed a mother and father, and it was assumed that he had killed their daughter, Samantha, as well, since the only remains of her were her bloody clothes. They put Ezra into questioning, but tried keeping him blindsided from the actual reason he was in there. Nolan was sent in to question him, but was told to slowly pry and figure out more about him. Shortly after, they got the full records of Ezra's stolen credit cards, where they found that he had an active hotel room that was purchased 2 nights ago. Lucy and Selena go to check it out, where they find Samantha sobbing in the hotel bathroom. They brought Samantha to the hospital, where she was informed that both of her parents were killed right after she was taken. After she calmed down, she told Lucy that Ezra gaslit her into believing that he commanded everything, including the police. Shortly after, Ezra had pieced together that the police had found out about the homicide. He called in all of the people behind the mirror, and while they were interrogating him, he let them know that he had found a new soulmate, aka he had abducted a new girl. The LAPD had to find the missing girl, and Ezra only agreed to tell him if they told Samantha that she was located at the Red Place, which was a trigger phase that he had used to manipulate Samantha. Samantha overheard Lucy and Selena talking about it, and that sent her into psychosis. It also led to most likely the most graphic scene in the entire show. It's so bad that I literally can't show you the scene. Luckily, the LAPD ended up finding the kidnapped girl. She had severe injuries, but both her and Samantha ended up making a full recovery. Afterwards, Ezra was sent away, and Lucy ended up having a sweet moment where she helped Samantha through her trauma. Truly a peak episode. This episode had me at the edge of my seat the entire time, and I believe the storytelling is one of the best in the entire series. Number 4, Season 2, Episode 10, The Dark Side. It makes complete sense that this episode is rated as high, as not only was this the first part of a 2-part episode arc, but it also introduced the most influential villain in the entire show. It starts with Nolan, Lucy, Jackson, and Nick Armstrong all at a bar. Lucy gets up to refill their table, where she ends up meeting Caleb Wright. They had planned to keep talking, but Lucy ended up making an arrest halfway through their conversation, so it was cut off early. The next day, Mid-Wilshire received a prisoner transfer for a female serial killer who agreed to reveal the rest of her undiscovered bodies, but she needs to retrace her steps. While waiting for her transfer, Caleb ended up showing up at the police station to see Lucy. They exchanged numbers and made plans to go to a bar later that night. Rosalind and the LAPD arrive at Griffith Park, where Rosalind slowly starts walking up towards the buried bodies. They found the first batch, but it didn't look nearly as decomposed as it should, as Rosalind had been in prison for 5 years, which means that someone had been burying their bodies near Rosalind's. They took a body to the morgue to start a biopsy, where they found out that the body had died from asphyxiation, lack of breath, but there were no choke marks. Not only that, but there was a tattoo on their side signifying their day of death. One of the other bodies also had DNA from certain animals that were held at an abandoned zoo, so Nolan and Nyla went to check it out. At the zoo, they not only found the perpetrator's next victim, but they also found the perpetrator himself. Nolan ran after him while Nyla tended to the victim. While following the suspect, Nolan ended up getting snuck up upon and nearly was suffocated to death. Nyla shows up at the perfect time and saved Nolan, but in return, the suspect got away. Later that night, Lucy went on a date with Caleb, and everything was going great. That was until Caleb spiked Lucy's drink and kidnapped her. Yeah, I think we know who the suspect is now. Overall, a very suspenseful episode, but I'm not sure if I believe it should be as high up on the ratings list. However, I do understand why it is, as it not only introduced Rosalind Dyer, but it also led to one of the best episodes that The Rookie had ever made, which was number 3. Season 2, Episode 11, Day of Death. This episode continues directly after the last episode on the list, The Dark Side. The LAPD is alerted about Lucy going missing, and they started digging around to find where she could be. Armstrong and Bradford are trying to search for Caleb's social media pages, but every single one of the pages were wiped out. Shortly after, it goes back to Lucy tied up in a chair. She managed to break out of the chair she was trapped in and knock down Caleb. She stumbled to the front door, where the camera pans around and shows that she is stranded in the middle of nowhere. Not only that, but Caleb had set booby traps to be extra safe of any escapes, and Lucy ended up tripping over one. Caleb captures her again and leads her over to her burial site. He led her to a barrel above ground with a hole that was previously dug out. Compared to Caleb's other kills, he normally had them suffocate above ground before burying their bodies. However, Lucy is a strong cop, so he took extra precautions to make sure she would most definitely die. He forces Lucy to climb into the barrel and buries her underground. The LAPD is trying everything they can to find Lucy's location, while Nick Armstrong is at his wife's grave. He goes to answer his phone, but not before Caleb appears. Caleb shows Nick a live feed of Lucy in the barrel, and has Nick follow him to the burial location. Shortly after, the LAPD find the location of the burial site, as it was Rosalind's uncle's house that was passed down to her after he passed. They showed up to the house to see that Caleb was holding Nick at gunpoint. Nolan tells him to drop the weapon, but it is too late as Nyla shoots Caleb in the chest. They try to put pressure on the wound so they could find where Lucy is buried, but it's too late. Caleb had lost too much blood and died. It was up to the LAPD to find Lucy's burial site, as they did not have much longer before Lucy would run out of oxygen. Eventually, Tim finds Lucy's ring laying on the ground and finds the barrel. He opens the latch to find Lucy inside, not breathing. He immediately starts CPR and it almost looks helpless until Lucy finally wakes up. She breaks into tears as everyone crowds around, filled with relief. What an episode. Most definitely top 3 episodes of all time. The build-up and suspense, the fear of not knowing if Lucy was going to survive or not, and surprisingly, the fact that there are 2 more episodes to go through is crazy. Number 2. Season 5, Episode 22, Under Siege. This one surprised me, as while I am a big fan of this episode and it had some great suspense moments, it doesn't feel like it should be this high up on the list, more towards the bottom. Anyways, it starts with Selena and Aaron walking home from a late night D&D session where they heard some rustling in an alleyway. They went to check it out and got ambushed by 2 masked men. One of them shot Aaron in the back of the chest, while the other left Selena with a head injury. Before leaving, they left Selena a very cryptic message.
Covered face, shroud of shame. No escape when you're to blame. Cry me a river, back to the start. Dog, deliver a live part.
The LAPD quickly arrive at the scene, where Selena is injured but conscious, and Aaron is unresponsive with heavy blood loss. Both are immediately rushed to the hospital, where Selena gives Nolan the cryptic message that the masked men left her with. They head to Mid-Wilshire, with the only clue for the identity of the people being Selena's riddle. I'm not going to yap about this episode for very long, as it was basically just the LAPD trying to piece together this riddle, but I'll point out some very important parts. After work, Bailey and Nolan were enjoying their peace and quiet until Nolan spotted one of the masked men outside of his house. A short gunfight starts, but Nolan managed to take down the suspect. But that wasn't the end of it, as at the same time, Nyla and James were also under attack. They had checked their baby monitor and saw one of the masked men had taken Nyla's baby. Thankfully, they ended up leaving Nyla's kid behind and drove off, but she wasn't able to get a license plate or any ID on the suspect. Anyways, Lucy and Tim went to knock on one of the suspect's doors named Luke Moran, but ended up getting ambushed by 20 plus masked individuals with riot shields. Lucy and Tim managed to take down most of them until Luke had escaped. They followed behind Luke's footsteps and had found him surrounded. Tim decided to ask Luke why he decided to do this, and it was because of his previous arrests all the way back in season 1, where he was arrested for elder abuse. He told the LAPD he was not going back to prison, and drew his weapon out on the LAPD. A couple shots were fired and Luke was pronounced dead. And of course, the rest of the plot was not resolved until the season 6 premiere almost an entire year later. The episode ended with Aaron going cold blue and left the audience in the dark on whether he would survive. If you were confused about what was happening during this episode, don't worry, a lot of people were. It constantly felt like the LAPD was stuck in a goose chase that wouldn't end. It's super strange that this was in the number 2 spot over The Day of Death. And now the number 1 greatest episode in The Rookie. And if you watch the show, you already know what episode this is. Season 1, episode 16, Greenlight. The tragic death of Captain Zoe Anderson. Near the beginning of the episode, Nolan and Bishop took a call for a disturbance at a hotel, where a valet ended up scratching a part of a girl's car. The two kept arguing, and the girl eventually pulled out a knife and tried stabbing the valet. Nolan had stopped her, but in return, he accidentally ripped part of her dress. Nolan did truly feel bad, but it didn't stop what happened next. Later that night, Nolan, Jackson, and Lucy were all eating food at a food truck. Nolan decided to head out early and catch some beauty rest, and as he was getting to his truck, later, Anderson showed up to inform Nolan that he had been greenlit, aka got a hit put on him by the Southern Front, a white supremacist gang. Anderson, Jackson, and Lucy ended up staying over at his house for the night as guards to make sure that Nolan stayed safe. Later that day, Nolan showed back up to work with applause all around the room. He was loading up the shop with Bishop when Anderson showed up and informed him that she would be riding with Nolan instead. Today, they were going to fight back against the Southern Front. In a single day, they shut down 7 of their businesses, arrested 46 of their men, and this was all done in just Los Angeles. Gray visited with the leader of the Southern Front, but he refused to dismiss the green light unless his son, Cole Midas, said so. And so they just kept attacking. Later in the day, Anderson and Nolan respond to a burglary call and head inside the house. The house seemed booby-trapped, but they kept going, and in return was flashbanged and knocked out. When they regained consciousness, they were both met by Cole Midas, the son of the leader of the Southern Front. Cole had tied both Anderson and Nolan up and had them sitting on wooden chairs. Instead of Anderson trying to beg for her life, she actually antagonized Cole, which ended up pissing him off. He kicked Anderson into the pool beside them, slowly drowning her. She managed to break out of the chair underwater and re-emerge to attack Cole. She kept shooting at Cole while he tried to escape, and well, 16 episodes into season 1, and a large character had just died. Nolan breaks out of his chair to try and save her, but it's too late. Anderson was dead. A funeral was held shortly after, and the whole cast was shown saluting her away. The next day, Gray barged into the leader's cell, demanding for Cole Midas' location to be revealed. He reveals at first, but Gray very politely informs him that he had just killed the Mid-Wilshire captain. Thankfully, Midas gave up Cole's location, and the LAPD had him arrested shortly after. The episode ends with Gray and Nolan having a serious talk, reminiscing about the time spent with Anderson. And with that, that was the top 10 best rated episodes in The Rookie. Since the pilot all the way back in 2018, we've seen the characters on The Rookie make some changes as the show evolved. But there are a few characters on the show that have completely changed since their first appearances. And today, I want to talk about 5 characters on The Rookie who have changed the most during the show's run. Starting off with a pretty obvious one, I'm going to talk about Tim Bradford, who over the span of 7 seasons has gone from one of the largest hardasses in the show to someone who started removing his shell and becoming a more emotionally intelligent person. Let's go back to the pilot to see exactly what I mean. In the pilot episode of the show, Tim was one of the most insufferable people on the roster. And before anyone comes after me for saying that, let me explain what I mean. In the pilot of the show, The writers make it very clear that we are supposed to be rooting for the rookies, which were John, Lucy, and Jackson. And with Tim being Lucy's TO, seeing him completely whip her around was a large contrast compared to how Lopez and Bishop handled Jackson and John. Not to mention that Tim was high-key racist in this episode.
Tell him that it's immigrants like them that make Americans like you look bad.
The writers end up trying to push this down later in the show and make the viewers forget that this ever happened. But I guess that was going to be a part of the initial vision for Tim, and then they switched it out once they were greenlit for the first season. But as the show continued to move forward, Tim had quite a few major changes that really shaped his character to not only be a better person, but a more dynamic character as a whole. The whole racism thing I mentioned earlier from the pilot ends up being challenged with the Doug Stanton plotline in season 3, where he stands by Jackson every step of the way, as well as helps Lucy defend Jackson when Doug was directly coming after him. Tim seemed genuinely disgusted by Doug's actions and took Jackson's words about complacency to heart. Another massive change was how emotionally vulnerable he became compared to where he was. Of course, we still see him being walled up to some people today, such as Miles, but that makes sense considering he still has to keep up his tough guy persona for his rookies. But with people that he sees as friends, such as Lopez, John, Nyla, and especially Lucy, he is a lot more open emotionally. This can be directly credited to Lucy during their relationship, as he realized that being open wasn't so bad, and that led him to growing heavily as a person. Next up on our list, I want to talk about a character who was introduced later in season 1 and went from being one of the most obnoxious and pretentious characters in the show to becoming an example of an amazing guy who would do anything for the people that he loves. Of course, I'm talking about Wesley Evers, who ever since his first major appearance in season 1 episode 10 has had the quickest change out of anyone else on the show. In this episode, and for the rest of the season afterwards, he was an extremely anti-police character who would fight back on almost anything he could, no matter how major or minor that it was. A large part of Wesley's character back then, as well as now, is that the justice system is broken and that something has to change. But back in season 1, he did absolutely nothing to actually try and change anything since he felt this way. Instead, he took it out on the police officers around him who had zero power to change anything on a systemic level on their own either. And for some of these police officers, they know the system can be better and try to change it on an individual level. But sometimes this wasn't enough for Wesley. He even acted this way towards Lopez, his girlfriend who he was supposed to support in life. And all of this reminds me of another character that I'm going to bring up in a minute. But as the next few seasons progressed, we saw Wesley step back and realize that what he is doing is unproductive. He is just making his life and other people around him's lives harder. It's very clear that he loves Lopez. He would kiss the ground that she walks on. And so, while they don't always agree on the state of the system, Wesley has changed two different things. Number one, he keeps it out of his personal life. Him and Lopez can put their disagreements to the side and put their love for each other first, as this meant more to him than anything else in the grand scheme of things. Number two, he switched up his career to a position that he believed needed help more. Instead of being a public defender and trying to stop injustice, he became a district attorney in order to prevent the injustice from happening in the first place. I think that both of these things are admirable, unlike his best friend, James Murray, who was introduced in season 3 and kind of replaced Wesley in this regard. But unfortunately, instead, he only became worse for everyone around him. I've talked a lot about him in my character tier list video, so if you want to hear more about his character, you can watch it at the end of this one. Moving on to the next character who has changed the most. For this one, I'm going to be changing up the format a little bit. While this character's personality hasn't changed too heavily, their career has. I'm talking about Lucy Chen, someone who in the span of 7 seasons went from a brand new rookie with no experience whatsoever to becoming the newest sergeant of the Mid-Wilshire Division. Back when she was first introduced, she was seen as someone willing to learn and do what she needed to do. But at the same time, she had a way of pushing back against things she didn't like. One part of this was when she dated John in the first 4 episodes of the show. They had to do this behind the backs of everyone else in the LAPD, because it could lead to trouble, and she knew this. While Bishop tried to tell her not to continue this, at first she didn't listen. Luckily, she does break out of this and that relationship, and I think that was the first major change in her character. The second part of her pushback was how she interacted with Tim. He is her training officer, and he demanded respect, but she was defiant with things that she didn't like, and she would make her voice heard. Funnily enough, she still does some of this now. However, as time went on, she locked in on her career, and this allowed her to rise the ranks and try out for other career paths much quicker than everyone around her. Literally weeks after becoming a P2 officer, she started work on becoming undercover. Then she wanted to be a detective. Both of these career paths didn't end up working out, but she stayed determined to find where in the LAPD she wanted to continue climbing up the ladder. And she does this through becoming sergeant. And as of the finale of season 7, she finally became one. It'll be interesting to see how her career continues to drastically change as the show continues. Now, let's get back to characters that have changed personality-wise. I've talked about this character a decent bit in terms of this, but I feel like if I don't talk about her, this video is incomplete. This part is about Selena Juarez, who went through all of the right changes in all of the right places. When she was first introduced in season 5, episode 3, Die Hard, we are introduced to a character who is eccentric, to say the least. She's really into horoscopes, spirituality, and auras, which on its own isn't a bad thing. But where it was bad was when she was using these auras and spirituality in her police work, which led to a plethora of instances where Selena had broken procedure, especially in this episode. From the illegal stop, to the illegal search of the vehicle, to saging the shop.
Was someone smoking weed in there?
I think that was me.
Excuse me?
Okay, that one isn't as bad, but you get my point. But this is the only character on this list that the viewers actively disliked when they were on screen. I agree, spiritual stuff and going Rambo on a solo mission as a rookie, she would have been canned if she was Lucy, Jackson, or Nolan. I really hate that character. She has absolutely no impulse control, doesn't follow direct orders, and solves cases with her mumbo-jumbo feelings. Even yelled at Tim and Gray. If any of the original 3 were like that, they would have been out of the program in the first week. Not to mention, they made Nolan just a total pushover when it comes to her. I just hate her character. So irritating, almost never listens to orders. Like when Nolan interrogated the man from her childhood. Nolan clearly said more than one time that she could not talk to him or ask anything from him, and she straight up did the opposite. Annoying. But it's time to give her credit, because within the span of maybe 8 episodes total from season 5 episode 19 until the middle of season 6, she drastically becomes a better character. She stopped putting the aura stuff into her police work, started to not only listen to her superiors, but build upon their orders, as well as become more dynamic with her relationships involving other characters, like Aaron, Lucy, and even John himself. And now, in season 7, she's serving as a well-respected P2, who is a good role model for Miles, as she can walk him through her mistakes. I want to give an honorable mention to Lieutenant Gray for very similar reasons to Tim Bradford's growth. He was a massive hard ass in the beginning of the show, but as the show went on, he realized that he didn't have to be so hard on his team and that he could depend on them to do their jobs effectively. This allowed him to open up more to his team and learn to empathize with them, especially with John. The way that Gray went from having it out for John in season 1 to seeing him as one of the most respected officers now was heartwarming to watch evolve. But now, I want to talk about another character who went through an amazing metamorphosis since her first appearance in the beginning of season 2. Detective Nyla Harper is a character who couldn't trust anybody going into the Mid-Wilshire Division. She even met Nolan in the most untrustworthy way possible, jump scaring him with an undercover meetup at a bar, switching up on him, and immediately starting their relationship on a bad foot. And while this was unfair to Nolan, it's also understandable why she did it and why she's as on edge as she was during the second season. She had just come back from years of undercover work that not only drained her mentally and burned her out, but she also had her family torn apart because of it. She lost her husband and lost a majority of contact with her only daughter. and she was very apprehensive to tell anyone about her struggles. She didn't tell anyone how hard she was having it behind the scenes, and this made Nyla as hard as she was on everybody, but especially Nolan, since she was his TO. However, just like Lucy with Tim, Nolan had a positive effect on Nyla and allowed her to open up to everybody. Over the span of her time with Nolan, she learned to really respect him and saw him as a rock to lean on when she really needed it. This is especially apparent in Season 7, Episode 9, The Kiss. I think the end of this episode is one of the most heartwarming interactions between two characters in the entire show, let alone between these two.
If you need anything, do not hesitate.
John.
This isn't to mention the relationship she grew with everyone else as well. She became best friends with Lopez through their detective work and became each other's rocks. She got very close to Lieutenant Gray because of their mutual respect for one another, as well as her relationship with James, which, while I don't like them together and I think she deserves better, I have to respect that she loves him very much and can be vulnerable with him, even when he doesn't deserve to have that title. And with that, those are some of the characters on The Rookie that have changed the most from when they were first introduced. There is a lot, and I mean a lot, of death in The Rookie. Even some of the most notorious and loved characters have died in some of the most gruesome ways. But what about the times that characters almost died but survived despite the odds? Today, we're gonna go over every time that The Rookie characters almost died. Let's start with one of the most well-known instances of a main character almost dying, which is in Season 2, Episode 11, Day of Death. I think we all know what I'm talking about, but for those who don't know or need a refresher, this is the episode after Lucy was kidnapped by Caleb Wright. The episode started with nobody knowing where Lucy was, and she had been missing for upwards of 13 hours by this point. And given the 24-hour window that it takes for one of his victims to die, it means that the LAPD was running out of time quickly. Lucy is not a quitter though, and she definitely wasn't one during this episode. When she was tied on the chair and was close to getting put in that barrel inside the house, she broke the chair and started to make a run for it. Unfortunately, she failed, which is when Caleb decided to upgrade his crazy plan. By burying her in the barrel underground, Lucy had even less oxygen to work with while waiting for the LAPD to save her. She sat there quietly, singing to herself to keep her sane while the oxygen level got lower and lower. It seems like it was over for her, until Tim saw the ring that she dropped outside of where she was buried, and she was saved. This definitely is one of, if not the most famous example of a character almost dying in the show. And it did an amazing job at telling the audience that they weren't going to hold back with what they had planned, even if it was going to emotionally torture us. This next example of a main character almost dying happened over 3 seasons later and is personally my favorite on the list. Season 5, Episode 22, Under Siege, is the episode in which Selena Juarez and Aaron Thorson were brutally attacked by the crew of masked men in the alley. While Selena was badly injured during the situation, she wasn't the one on death's doorstep. It was Aaron. He was wheeled into the hospital with Bailey, to the horror of Lopez and Wesley. Nolan, with the help of Selena, tries to decipher the cryptic message that one of the masked men told her while she was taken out. And while they're confused at first, they get to work finding out what it means. Meanwhile, the rest of the LAPD made it their highest priority to catch the guys who put Aaron in this condition. Slowly but surely, the pieces come together for both the message as well as who is behind the attempted killing. During all of this, the operations are not going well. The doctors are panicking, and his vitals are dropping. That night, the killers come back, but for Nolan and Bailey this time, as well as Nyla and James right after. Luckily, they were unsuccessful on both fronts, and this is what led to finding where the mask came from. A one-act play that sold their assets over the years until they landed in the hands of Roy Greco, as well as his crew of past convicts. The LAPD take out the crew of grunts, but they miss the real villain behind it all, who is revealed at the end of the episode. But what's also revealed at the end is Aaron being wheeled into emergency surgery, and this was the cliffhanger that the season ended on. Luckily, he heals up by the middle of the first episode of Season 6, but when Season 5 ended, nobody knew if Aaron was going to be okay. For months, the audience was scared that Aaron was actually going to die, and this is what makes this instance one of my favorites. Next up, we have to go to the beginning of Season 5, all the way back in Episode 4, The Choice. And this instance is none other than Bailey Noon being trapped in the Chamber of Death created by Rob Rosalind Dyer. This episode, like the last one, jumps right into the thick of it, as not even 3 minutes into this episode, Bailey falls into the chamber and is stuck without any help until the LAPD arrive. At first, Nolan and everyone else were just gonna bust through the grate and get her out, but then she shows them that there are actually a whole bunch of other booby traps laid around the chamber. That's when the water begins to start rising, and Nolan gets the call from Rosalind, where he is sent on a wild goose chase to get to her. Meanwhile, as he has to ditch his things and drive away, the water level just continues to rise. The LAPD realizes that unless someone got her out of there, she was going to be electrocuted by the grate. Nolan finally gets to Rosalind, and a live feed is waiting there for him. Rosalind gives Nolan an option: either take the gun she hands him and shoot her in order to save Bailey, or he does nothing and she will slowly die in front of his eyes. The water level is at dangerous levels by this point, and they need to get her out fast. The LAPD find the generator, and the plan is set. And as Tim says,
She's cold, she's exhausted, everything has to go perfectly in order for us to save her.
Nolan decides not to shoot her and trust his gut, and the LAPD cut the generator. Bailey is then forced to go under the water while the booby traps are going off on the surface. If she goes up to the surface, she dies, but if she stays underwater too long, she also dies. Eventually, she goes limp. Luckily, they cut the grate just in time, and Selena jumps in to go get her. Some CPR later, and Bailey is resuscitated. She was likely seconds away from death in there, and without everybody's help, she would have been as good as dead. Moving on to our next episode, we have to go back to Season 3, Episode 5, Lockdown. And for this one, we're going to talk about the time that Jackson West almost died while on patrol with Doug Stanton. I know that Jackson ends up dying later in the series, but this is an example of when he almost died much sooner. Unlike the other episodes from earlier in this list, this episode doesn't actually center around the near-death experience. Instead, it's at the end of the episode, so we're just going to focus on that. In the final quarter of the episode, Doug and Jackson are responding to a call that comes from Manor Apartments, one of the most dangerous spots in all of Los Angeles. And when they get there, Jackson runs into the suspects they were after. They slowly were approaching him until one of them jumps from behind his back and takes Jackson down. They proceeded to beat him, kick him, and make him bleed until he wasn't moving. And while all of this was happening, Doug was just watching it happen. He didn't call for backup. He didn't go in to save his partner. No, he just sat and watched, and then slowly backed up so that he didn't have to keep witnessing it. I plan on making a whole video about the Doug Stanton plotline in the future, so make sure to leave a like if you want me to make it happen. Anyways, Jackson is wheeled away in critical condition, and while he ends up being okay in the hospital by the end of the episode, it was clear that just a little longer of a beating could have easily killed him, and that's why this is on the list. With this next one, we have to time travel all the way back to Season 1 with the pilot episode of the show. We're going to talk about the first ever near-death experience that was shown on The Rookie, and that was with Tim Bradford during the shooting in the alley. Once again, this episode doesn't just focus on Tim's near-death experience, considering it is the pilot. So we're going to just jump forward to when it actually happened. About 32 minutes into the episode, the suspect matching the bolo that the LAPD got earlier has been spotted, and Tim and Lucy respond to it. They decide to call him back up, and that's when Nolan, Bishop, Lopez, and Jackson are starting to head that way. But they don't get there until after the shootout begins. And shortly after said shootout started, Tim was shot in the chest right through the window. This forces Lucy to give up on shooting them to go and save Tim. Tim is bleeding out at this point and is in critical condition, but he still tells Lucy to keep shooting back instead of trying to patch him up. That's when everyone else shows up, and Nolan and Bishop are able to safely apprehend Selby. We don't see Tim again until the next episode since he needed to heal, but it's insane that in the pilot episode, the show already made the audience think that one of the officers was going to die. Also, unlike the rest of these instances though, this actually is not the only near-death experience that Tim faced though, and it's actually technically not even the only one in the first season. Let's jump ahead to Season 1, Episode 20, Freefall, as this involves the virus situation that the LAPD had to contain, especially Tim and Lucy, since Tim was locked inside the room with the man who was dying of the disease. It was unknown if he was going to make it before the experimental vaccine was going to get to him, since he didn't have any symptoms and it really hadn't been that long since the man that was infected had died. Luckily, the vaccine did make it in time and he was able to get it administered, but the virus isn't actually the only near-death experience that he faced within this situation. It was the vaccine itself as well. as at the very end of this episode, Tim collapses on the ground with everyone around him. Going into the first episode of season 2, he's having a severe reaction to the vaccine that puts him into anaphylactic shock, and it looked like it was going to get worse until the shooting in the front of the hospital started and distracted everybody. It was unknown how Tim was doing until he busted out of the ambulance and is shown to be just fine. Now let's move on to a more recent example that happened in the middle of season 7, with season 7 episodes 8 and 9, Wildfire and The Kiss. I lump both episodes in here as the actual near-death experience happened at the end of Wildfire, and then it continues into The Kiss. The victim of this near-death experience was James Murray. At the end of Wildfire, while taking care of some boxes at the end of the evacuation, a drive-by shooter comes by and shoots Kylie and James. And when Selena finds them, they are both in severely critical condition. When Nyla is told about the shooting, she is left speechless. Then Tim and Lucy see James get rolled into the hospital. He is sent straight to operation, very similar to Aaron Thorson's case. Due to Nolan knowing about the situation involving James and Kylie's kiss, however, Nyla is immediately made a suspect, and the majority of the episode is spent trying to clear her name. But while doing so, they find a lot of things, including a picture with Leonard Kelsey, an anti-police extremist. This ended up causing issues, as now the LAPD knows that James knowingly invited a prominent fugitive into his home underneath Nyla's nose. Luckily, they find out who the assailant was, and Nolan, Tim, and Lucy are able to apprehend him. Also, luckily, James is able to get out of the operation while being relatively okay. Obviously, he's still in crappy condition and continued to be for the next few episodes, but given that he was shot multiple times in the chest and was rushed into the ER Aaron Thorson style, it was a miracle that he survived. Next up, I'm going to talk about the season 3 finale and first episode of season 4, since I feel like I have to talk about this instance, even if the character wasn't physically about to die. We're talking about Angela Lopez getting smuggled to Guatemala by La Fiera to be used as a surrogate to her own child, while La Fiera would then take Angela's child and raise the child as her own, all while killing Angela after she gives birth. She has no way out of this situation on her own, and when she tries to give La Fiera some pushback, she drops the killer line.
But if you resist, Dr. Morales will put you into a twilight sleep and you will spend the next 3 months as an incubator and your life ends.
She knew that she was good as dead unless something happened. And that's when Wesley and the LAPD headed to Guatemala to help rescue her from La Fiera's grasp. It was a close call though, as in order to be saved, Angela had to go through forced labor to get everyone out of the house, as well as was getting continuously chased by La Fiera and her men. Without Wesley or the LAPD showing up to be able to get her out of there, she would have 100% died, and we would have never seen Angela Lopez again. Those are all of the notable times where characters almost died in The Rookie. There are some couples in The Rookie that are universally loved within the fan base, but there are also couples that are universally hated as well. So in this video, we're going to go over 5 of the most loved couples on the show, as well as 5 of the most hated. Starting with the couple that turned the show into a viral sensation, Tim Bradford and Lucy Chen, also known as Chenford. In the pilot episode of the show, Lucy, a rookie, gets paired up with her training officer, Tim Bradford. In the early seasons, Tim was very aggressive and strict, while Lucy was the opposite. Watching these two interact during season 1 and the beginning of season 2, you would feel like they would hate each other and could never picture them being friends, let alone dating. But over the course of 5 seasons, after both going through traumatic events that brought them closer together, what started out as a professional relationship turned into more, eventually leading them to admit their feelings for each other in season 5, episode 8, The Collar. The 5-season slow burn is one of the reasons why fans love the couple so much, because their intense chemistry was obvious even when they were just friends and both in other relationships. At the beginning of Tim and Lucy's relationship, they were already facing problems, as Tim was a sergeant with a higher rank and Lucy was a P2, which created a power imbalance. Because of the strain that this was putting on their potential relationship, Tim eventually transferred to Metro to avoid being in her chain of command, because Lucy was able to move around a bunch of people. This sacrifice made fans even more obsessed with the ship because it showed Tim's dedication to Lucy, that he was willing to transfer from the job that he loved if that meant that they could be together. Their relationship really made the show as popular as it is today, as Chenford edits started to go viral on TikTok, some of them racking up millions of views. It makes sense that once Lucy and Tim finally got together, fans went crazy because we were starting to wonder if it was ever going to happen. For years, we would get teased by the writers hinting at the possibility of Tim and Lucy being more than friends in the future, but it was always redacted in some way. In season 3, episode 9, Lucy tells Tim she has feelings for him, but in the end, it turns out that she was just pranking him. This put the idea in fans' heads that there was a possibility, since Tim technically didn't decline nor reciprocate those feelings towards her. And in season 4, episode 22, Day in the Hole, they kissed as preparation for an undercover mission where they had to act like they were a couple. You could tell that this kiss meant more to both of them, but they wouldn't express their feelings until much later. Although the wait wasn't unnecessarily long, the buildup of the relationship is eventually what made them getting together much more satisfying. Until they broke up in season 6, episode 6, Secrets and Lies. Ever since the breakup, we are back on the writer's teeter-totter of will they get back together or won't they, until season 8 comes out. On the flip side, before Chenford took over the fandom, Lucy had another relationship at the very beginning of the show with none other than fellow rookie John Nolan. And this is one of the most hated relationships in the entire show. This relationship was short-lived, starting in the pilot episode only for them to break up in season 1, episode 4, The Switch. During the couple's brief relationship, they left a lasting impression on fans and are hated for many reasons. The main one being the large 18-year age gap between the two of them. Nolan being 46 and starting his life over in the pilot, as well as Lucy being in her late 20s. The two never seemed like they belonged together, as they were both in very different stages of their lives. Their relationship also felt forced, like they were just together because there was no one else around. Early on, the age difference started to impact their relationship. When John's training officer, Talia Bishop, found out about the two, she warned Lucy that dating him would brand her and damage her reputation, and she would not be taken seriously, even though there was no power imbalance. This is interesting considering in later seasons, when Lucy dates Tim, the whole branding scenario is never brought up again. That double standard, though, went unnoticed, as fans preferred Lucy to be with Tim rather than Nolan anyways, because her relationship with Nolan is seen as boring and stale, whereas the grumpy sunshine dynamic between her and Tim creates a more interesting story. What's even more interesting is that as far as we know, the only people who know about Lucy's relationship with Nolan are his T.O. Bishop and later on Jackson, but the secret seems to die with him, as it's almost non-existent within the show that they dated. So it begs the question, how would Tim react if he ever found out about Lucy and Nolan? Hopefully we find out someday. While Nolan and Lucy didn't last long, a loved couple that's been together since season 1 as well is Angela Lopez and Wesley Evers. In season 1, episode 10, Flesh and Blood, Angela and Wesley first meet when Angela is helping Wesley catch a man who had stolen his briefcase.
Stop that guy, he's getting away.
Let go of me.
Calm down.
Calm down. I was just chasing the guy that stole my briefcase. You're supposed to identify yourself before you engage a suspect.
Do you want to file a report on your briefcase or keep telling me how to do my job?
However, when Angela caught him, Wesley didn't approve of how she took the suspect down, sparking a heated argument between the two of them. This interaction perfectly captured their chemistry and contrasting personalities, clearly hinting at romantic tension behind the surface. Later in the episode, Wesley asks Angela out on a date, starting what would become one of the most consistent and beloved relationships on The Rookie. Over the seasons, we see both characters fight through real challenges due to their jobs, like when Wesley lied and worked for Elijah Stone, or when La Fiera kidnapped Angela to Guatemala. Their traumatic experiences often brought them closer together instead of tearing them apart, which is one of the reasons why the couple is among the healthiest on the show. Even within the midst of the chaos and trauma from their jobs, their relationship never loses its spark, in part due to Angela's fiery personality that often clashes with Wesley's calm, by-the-book demeanor. Angela also never shies away from cracking jokes about Wesley's rich family or his trust fund, which ensures that there's never a dull moment with these two in the room. More importantly, beneath all the humor lies a deep devotion to one another. Angela and Wesley would do anything for each other, and that is especially demonstrated when Wesley willingly put his own life at risk to save Angela after she was kidnapped by the Guatemalan cartel. That moment proved how fearless they are when it comes to protecting one another. Even after everything, they are now married with 2 kids. So I think it's safe to say that they make one badass duo, and it's easy to see why they are one of the most loved characters on the show. But yet, despite having a beautiful and consistent love story, Angela and Wesley don't get the spotlight that they deserve, and are frequently overshadowed by the viral pairing of Chenford. It's also not uncommon to go multiple episodes without seeing any Lopez scenes at all. This is frustrating for fans who followed Lopez since the beginning, just to see them be underutilized since Tim and Lucy became a thing. Now, where Wesley and Angela's relationship has been the most consistent, Nyla and James' relationship has been a drama-filled roller coaster. James and Nyla as a couple are often hated within the fanbase, mostly because of their constant fighting and lack of communication due to their careers. The pair first meet in Season 3, Episode 2, Injustice, at James Community Center, where he's working to correct the justice system and push for police reform. This naturally creates tension in their relationship since Nyla is an LAPD officer, and James is often very critical of the exact system that she works in. Even with their conflicting morals, James decided to not only date, but willingly marry a cop. And as if their conflicting careers wasn't enough reason to dislike the couple, James is controversial enough on his own. His constant criticism of the police, while valid at times, often comes across as closed-minded, as he almost refuses to acknowledge any of the good work police officers do, completely undermining Nyla's work and the good that she's done as an officer. To make matters worse, their relationship felt rushed and moved way too fast as they got pregnant, married, with no real proposal by the way, and moved in together all within a short period of time without addressing their underlying issues. It almost feels like they thought if they just pushed forward and got married, their problems would be resolved. But even into Season 7, they continue to argue about the same things. So we'll just have to wait until Season 8 to see where they stand. And although it's clear that they love each other and are willing to make sacrifices, like Nyla getting into police reform specifically to please James, it's hard to see them lasting due to their differences. So while their relationship is filled with conflict and tension, you could say the complete opposite for Wade and Luna. They are one of the most loved couples on The Rookie because of their wholesome and loving moments that are not often seen in the show's other couples amidst all the chaos. A great example of this would be in Season 4, Episode 21, Mother's Day.
And voila.
You bought me a horse.
No, riding lessons.
Wade gives Luna horseback riding lessons as a meaningful gift on Mother's Day. This is especially a sweet gesture as it's something to take their mind off the fact that their daughter just left home for college. Luna has also been very thoughtful in their marriage as she has continued to be supportive of Wade's decision to keep working in the LAPD even though she'd prefer he retire. What makes the couple even more lovable is that Luna is seen as the happiest character on the show, and her positive attitude often reflects on their marriage. Despite whatever situation she's in, she continues to be optimistic, like in Season 3, Episode 4, Sabotage, when Nolan's mom Evelyn scammed her out of a CBD oil business deal, or in Season 5, Episode 9, Take Back, when her daughter was missing. Even throughout all of that, she stayed calm and optimistic, so it's easy to see why she's seen as the happiest character in the entire show. What also sets Wade and Luna apart from the other couples is that their relationship did not develop on screen, and they are the only couple involving a main character that has been together since the start of the show. In Season 4, it's actually mentioned that they've already been married for 25 years at that point, which definitely predates the show if you didn't know that. Just the fact that they've been together that long with no on-screen drama, it's easy to see that they are the healthiest relationship on the show. In comparison though, Selena and Raj are one of the most hated as well as the newest couple on the show. Though Selena has been recurring in the show since Season 5, Raj was first introduced as a nameless one-off gag character when Nolan and Selena responded to a call and found him singing the show's now iconic song, Daddy Cop. And then he was found again in Season 6, Episode 2, The Hammer. Raj was later given a recurring role as Selena's boyfriend in Season 7, Episode 10, Chaos Agent. Fans were not fond of his more significant role in the show, but it had little to do with the character and more about the actor himself. Much of the backlash stems from the belief that nepotism is what led the actor to becoming a recurring character, rather than talent, since Xander Hawley, who plays Raj, is the son of the show's creator, Alexi Hawley. The nepotism is specifically believable since his character's acting often falls flat compared to the rest of the cast. His relationship with Selena is also similar, as they only seem to crack jokes and are rarely affectionate with one another. This makes sense since all Raj has proven to be so far is the comedic relief character. In comparison, a ship with Selena that seems to have more potential is her and Aaron Thorson. Aaron first appeared as a new rookie in Season 4, Episode 2, 5 Minutes. Later, the two became close friends who bonded over the game Dungeons & Dragons. The two got even closer after they were attacked by a group of masked men, during which Aaron was shot. This led Aaron to kiss and develop feelings for Selena due to the trauma they both experienced. Although Selena did not reciprocate those feelings and their relationship remained platonic, the chemistry was there between the two, unlike with Selena and Raj. However, there was amazing chemistry between another couple, Nolan and Grace. Grace first appeared in Season 2, Episode 2, The Night General, when she and Nolan run into each other at Shaw Memorial Hospital, after not seeing each other for over 20 years. It's clear that they had a lot of chemistry with each other. Later in the episode, it's revealed that Nolan met Grace during his junior year of college when he and his now ex-wife Sarah were broken up. Turns out that he and Grace were in a serious relationship, but it was cut short. Sarah showed up at Nolan's dorm with the news that she was pregnant, and Nolan broke up with Grace shortly after leaving her a note and then disappearing, which he still seemed to be upset by. And I definitely do not blame her for that. So it's easy to say that they fit the exact definition of the one that got away. At the end of the episode, we learn that Grace is married and has an 8-year-old son, but that is later redacted as she tells Nolan that she and her husband, Simon, have been separated for over a year. Eventually, this leads them to go on a date and rekindle their relationship. One of the reasons that made the couple work so well is they had a lot of life experience in common, both having had kids, gotten divorced, and moving to Los Angeles pretty recently. Nolan and Grace were also both emotionally mature within their relationship, as even though Grace had a lingering grudge towards him from their initial breakup, she was able to put that aside and decided to try being friends with him despite that. In addition to that, Nolan was very patient with Grace when she was contemplating fixing things with her husband in Season 2, Episode 18, Under the Gun. This was very sad considering how loved the couple was, as Nolan practically begged her not to go back to her husband, but sadly, they broke up in the same episode. While Nolan and Grace had a mature relationship and eventually broke up, the same cannot be said for Lucy and Chris, as they ended up being one of the most hated pairings in the show. And it wasn't even really their fault. Lucy and Chris first met in Season 4, Episode 10, Heartbeat, when they started arguing due to opposing views on prosecuting a drug dealer. Their relationship officially starts when Tim sets up a double date with him, his girlfriend Ashley, Chris, and Lucy. Lucy and Chris's relationship, as well as Tim and Ashley's, were seen as the last hurdle to finally getting Tim and Lucy together, as neither of these relationships felt genuine and were both in the way of what was actually meant to be, which was Chenford. From early on in their relationship, Chris often came off as emotionally tone deaf and on multiple occasions failed to notice Lucy's hesitation about moving forward with their relationship. And at one point, he even referred to her as his girlfriend before she even agreed to that label. So there was no surprise when he repeatedly rushed their relationship, particularly when he suddenly brought up the idea of buying a house together and impulsively started to look at listings without any prior discussion, automatically assuming that they were on the same page when they weren't. One of Chris's most criticized moments is when Lucy and Chris were making coffee while taking a break from trial prep. Chris casually started to hum Dream a Little Dream of Me.
Yep. I'm so sorry.
The song was stuck in your head because you've seen the video.
Well, yeah.
Which is the song that Lucy had sung when she was buried alive during her kidnapping. Even though he had been watching the Barrel video while prepping for trial, the fact that he could casually hum the song associated with the most traumatic event in his girlfriend's life shows how completely unaware and insensitive he truly is. The couple finally broke up in Season 5, Episode 9, Take Back. As in the previous episode, Lucy and Tim finally admitted their feelings for each other, which is something fans have been waiting for many seasons. Now, before we get on to our final most hated couple, let's rapid fire two of the most loved couples who are not always in the spotlight, but are just as lovable as the others, starting with Pete and Chastity. The couple's last on-screen appearance together was in Season 4, Episode 22, Day in the Hole. Chastity, however, has appeared in 2 more episodes without Pete, even though he was mentioned. There always seemed to be an excuse for his absence. Since Pete hasn't been in any episodes in the past 3 seasons, fans are wondering if he'll ever make a return. Another loved couple who hasn't been seen since season 4 is Elroy and Nell. Elroy, an awkward crime scene cleaner, was first introduced in season 2, episode 8, Cleanup, when he met Nolan at a crime scene. Despite Elroy's high-strung personality, he and Nolan formed a genuine friendship. Wanting to help his new friend, Nolan introduced Elroy to Nell, a mid-Wilshire dispatcher that he had a crush on but had only spoken to over the phone. Their initial interactions were adorably awkward, but things quietly developed off-screen. In season 4, episode 22, Day in the Hole, once again, it's revealed that Elroy and Nell have been dating and traveling together for some time. Although the couple hasn't been seen since season 4, their cute, nerdy dynamic makes them not only a fan favorite, but one of the cutest and most wholesome couples in the show. While these two have quietly earned a place in fans' hearts, the same cannot be said for the next couple we are covering today, Nolan and Bailey. Their relationship begins in season 3, episode 14, Threshold, when Bailey, who is only wearing a towel, knocks on Nolan's door, explaining that she got locked out of his house that she's dog sitting at.
Hello!
Hi, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm dog sitting for your neighbors and I kind of locked myself out. Thank God, yes.
Nolan then lends her the spare key in one of his hoodies, and in the same scene, they plan a date for later that night. Just by their initial interaction, it was obvious that Bailey was going to be Nolan's new love interest, but the chemistry just was never there between the two of them. Although they often express their love for each other, there's very little emotional depth between them. Their relationship also faced major problems early on when it was revealed that Bailey was in an abusive relationship with her husband Jason, and she did not tell Nolan about this. While most viewers sympathize with her fear, this is when fans started to be hesitant about her character, as Bailey started to become a controversial character all on her own. Despite her impressive background as a firefighter and in the Army Reserve, her character felt underdeveloped and was mostly defined by her relationship with Nolan, as well as all of her characteristics, as well as all of the talents that she's seemingly able to do. One of the biggest turning points in fan perception came during the Malvado storyline, when Bailey gaslit Nolan and expected him to overlook the fact that she gave a hitman his ex-husband's location and basically was an accessory to murder. Rather than acknowledging how serious this was, she tried to shift the blame and make Nolan feel guilty for being upset, and she expected him to prioritize their relationship over his duties as a police officer. Considering the whole show, compared to his past relationships, Bailey just didn't stack up, as Nolan's dynamic with his other relationships had much more chemistry. Grace, Jessica, Lucy, okay, Bailey's better than Lucy, but still, their relationship lacked emotional depth and realism. What's even more surprising is that for some reason, nowadays people are starting to ship Nolan with Tim's sister, Jennifer, who he's only done a few scenes with. People claim that they have even more chemistry than Bailey and Nolan do, which I'll be honest, I don't see, but you gotta let me know in the comments if you guys see it. Even though Nolan and Bailey did end up getting married in season 6, episode 2, The Hammer, and recently in season 7 have been trying to adopt, the couple doesn't quite seem to hit the mark with fans, along with all the other most hated couples on this list. Those are all the most loved and most hated couples on The Rookie. The Rookie is one of my favorite shows of all time, and I love taking every opportunity I get to glaze the show, but I'm not gonna lie and say that it's perfect. So today, I'm gonna switch things up and talk about everything I personally do not like about The Rookie and explain why I feel this way. And stay tuned, because some of these may be some pretty hot takes. The first thing I wanna talk about, or I guess the first person I wanna talk about, is Monica Stevens and how much I loathe her storyline. Look, I thought Monica was an interesting addition to the show when she was first introduced, being the crooked lawyer that gave Elijah whatever he wanted when Wesley couldn't. And then adding the fact that she was Wesley's ex-fiance, I actually really liked it. But then when Elijah was defeated and she moved on to being a centimillionaire criminal mastermind, I started to lose my patience with her. Every episode that passed, her storyline just got more and more ridiculous to the point where it wasn't even intriguing anymore. And now we're heading into season 8, and not only is she still here, but she has immunity? How in the world is this plot ever going to be solved? She's basically become the ruler of the world when it comes to the show, and I hate this so much. I'm hoping that she's killed off within the first couple episodes of the new season, because if not, I'm gonna lose a lot of interest in what's going on in the main plot of the show. The next thing I want to talk about that I really dislike about the show is how they've really started to neglect the other couples of the show for Chenford. I am a massive Lopez fan, and I have been ever since I first started watching the show. Watching them grow not only as a couple, but also as individuals was amazing to see, and I became more glued to their story. But as Chenford started to form, Lopez, along with every other couple, started being pushed towards the sidelines to show Tim and Lucy instead. Listen, I am not a Chenford hater, and I am not trying to say that they shouldn't be a thing, but their relationship has caused the showrunners to neglect the rest. When was the last time we really got to see growth come from Nyla and James' relationship? What about Lopez? Bailey and Nolan haven't been neglected as much, but I'm pretty sure that is because it involves Nolan, who's the main character of the whole show. But the other two couples especially have been neglected to shine a light on Tim and Lucy instead. I have a couple other gripes with Chenford, but we'll get back to those later. Let's move on to the third thing that I dislike about the show, and that is that I feel like the terrible timeline breaks the immersion of the show for me. Maybe I'm taking the show a little too seriously when I complain about this, but I think there's way too many inconsistencies involving the timeline that just make me more confused than anything else. One of my biggest gripes with the timeline involves ages, since there's some age discrepancies that literally break the lore of some characters. Let me bring up the biggest examples, which are John and Henry Nolan, as well as the age difference between the two. When the show began, John Nolan was said to be a 45-year-old man, and it's also mentioned that his son, Henry, was born when he was 20 years old. But this gets annihilated as soon as Henry is introduced, as when we meet him in season 1, he is 20 years old. This is an issue because he's supposed to be 25 at this time, but in the matter of half a season, they already break the timeline. Okay, whatever. They got an age wrong. Not a big deal. But then they decide to change the age of Henry between episodes. In one episode, he's 20 years old. In the next episode, he's 19 years old. And then he's 20 again after that. How does any of that make any sense at all? Now back to John. Like I mentioned earlier, he's supposed to be 45 years old in the pilot, which takes place in 2018. But now in season 7, he's 49 years old, despite it taking place in 2025. This means he has aged 4 years within the last 7 years in the show. I think I've rambled enough about ages, so let me just talk about another timeline issue that really grinds my gears. We need to talk about Selena Juarez and the tragedy that is her timeline. She is introduced in season 5 of the show, which takes place in 2021 according to the timeline. But according to season 6, it jumps all the way to 2024. And like I mentioned earlier, season 7 takes place in 2025. Why is this all important? Because this would imply that Selena Juarez has been a rookie for 3 to 4 years rather than the 12 months it usually takes. Having a rookie stay a rookie for multiple seasons isn't a novel concept though, since they did this back in seasons 1 to 3 with John, Lucy, and Jackson. But the difference with them is that those seasons took place over the span of the same 13-month period. Now that they have this massive time jump between the seasons, it makes their probationary period absolutely ridiculous. And I'm hoping they don't do the same thing with Miles. Okay, I'm sure you don't want me complaining about the timeline anymore, so I'm just gonna move on. Let's go back to Chenford. I have to talk about Chenford and how I heavily dislike the writing of the couple, as well as the writing of their story. Like I said earlier, I do not hate Chenford as a concept, nor either of the characters. I actually really like both Tim and Lucy, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't notice some negative changes in their characters and storylines that came from Chenford being introduced. Earlier on in the show's run, Tim was a very rigid, strict TO that was emotionally guarded and had his walls up. This was such a good contrast when interacting with everyone else, especially with Lucy, who needed that type of figure during her training. His rigidness also was super funny when interacting with characters like Lopez, who would just get on his nerves.
I got your back, boo.
But when he got with Lucy and even after the relationship, no matter how hard he tried with Miles and others, that tough guy persona just wasn't the same anymore since he started to soften up. this personality change I honestly don't mind as much, since it's less one-dimensional and makes him more of a dynamic character. But where I really don't like the personality changes with Chenford is the changes with Lucy. It feels like after Lucy and Tim got together, Lucy just kind of became Tim's second half, and the show was taking away her personal agency. She worked so hard during the first half of the show and had to overcome so much, but it feels like it's all being overshadowed with Chenford. This is all too common in shows, where the woman of a ship will get overshadowed by the relationship rather than being known for her own accomplishments. And I think that Lucy deserves way better than that, as she's one of the best characters in the whole show. Now to talk about how they're writing Chenford's story. I hate what they're doing with Chenford right now. Everything they did during season 7 really grinded my gears, because instead of giving them any actual development and building on their story, they would just tease the audience with little snippets to get them hyped up and ready to watch the next episode. Yet as episodes passed, nothing of actual substance ever actually happened. The biggest example of this was in season 7, episode 15, A Deadly Secret. Remember how they were locked down in the hospital and were talking about baby names in their relationship? I do. Do you remember what this information ended up leading to? I don't. Oh wait, it didn't lead to anything. That is my gripe. They're writing Chenford stuff just to keep the audience on their toes on whether they'll get back together or not, and then never actually give us anything. I get Chenford being in the show, but Lexi, please just give us something of substance for once. Alright, I feel like I've said enough about Chenford, so I'm just going to move on to the next thing that I really don't like about the show. This one may be more popular than others in this video, but I'm going to say it anyway. The more that I rewatch The Rookie for these videos, the more I dislike Bailey, her background, her personality, and her relationship with Nolan as a whole. And each one of these things is for different reasons. I hate how she basically can do anything. She isn't just part of the LAFD, she is the LAFD. She is everywhere. Do they need a paramedic? Bailey. Do they need a firefighter? Bailey. Do they need a dancer? Bailey, I guess. I don't understand why she needs to have everything under her belt. She is fine as just a firefighter, maybe with some military experience under her belt. Oh wait, she's a lieutenant in the reserves too. I don't get why they had her do so much. Now onto her personality. I think that she is so flat. The way that she talks to people, including Nolan, just feels forced and has no genuinity attached to it. I remember back in my tier list video, I mentioned that I think Nolan and Bailey are good together, but the more that I watch them, the more I disagree with my previous opinion. They have pretty much no chemistry at all. And what makes it even worse is that Nolan dated more than one woman that would have been much better suited for him. By far, Grace Sawyer would have been the best match with Nolan. I thought they had amazing chemistry, and when I first watched the show, I thought they would have been endgame. That is until the show decided to call it quits, for some reason. I never really understood why they broke Nolan and her up, but I think it was a disservice to John's story. And if they didn't turn Jessica into some weird psycho who killed a suspect without any lethal force sent her way, she could have been a good match for Nolan too. But then they threw that away with what I mentioned above, as well as the whole kids thing. And then Lucy, no, that deserved to end the way it did. Anyway, I think you could see that I don't like Bailey, and I think this opinion will only get stronger the more I rewatch this show. Moving on, I want to talk about something involving Captain Anderson. And I did gloss over this a little bit in my video that I made about her and her story, which I'll leave a link to at the end of this one as well as in the description. But the one part of her story that I didn't like was the way that it ended. Look, I think that the way she went out was great. I think killing her off the way that they did was amazing for Officer Nolan's story and to give him motivation to be a better cop. However, a counterpoint I want to make is why did they do it so damn early into the show? We only saw her for 16 episodes before she was killed off. There was so much that we never learned about her, and this is partially because the show just didn't give us enough time with her. I also think that her death would have been more impactful not only for Nolan, but also for the audience if they killed her off towards the time that they killed off Nick Armstrong, like around the end of season 2 or the beginning of season 3. The show missed the opportunity to get the audience extremely attached to this character, learning about all of her death and her backstory, and then killing her off. I love her and her story, but the timing kind of ruins it for me. I know that I've been pretty critical about some aspects of the show during this video, but I just want to reiterate that I love this show very much, and I wouldn't make videos about it if I didn't. I'm just hoping that the showrunners can fix some of these things in the next season, like the Monica Stevens plotline and the dragging of Chenford, but I guess we'll just have to see. That is everything that I hate about The Rookie. Make sure to hype up this video if you're on mobile to show me some love, and subscribe to see more videos like this one. Thanks for watching. When Season 4 of The Rookie came out back in 2021, the show was doing massive numbers, and in a world where TV was dying, it was leading the industry. Of course, it was inevitable that ABC and the show's creator, Alexi Hawley, were going to want to expand on the success in some sort of way. That is when The Rookie Feds was born, a show centering a rookie FBI agent that navigated the same treacherous path that Nolan had to in the main show, being a rookie at such an older age. However, The Rookie Feds failed spectacularly, ending after one season and being pulled from the network faster than Nolan went through girlfriends in the first couple seasons of the show. But why did this show fail so badly that you can't even find it on streaming services anymore? The only way to watch it is by buying the episodes one by one for a couple of bucks each. And in 2026, who's doing that? It's clear that they're trying to bury this show, but because they tried to cross these two shows over each other throughout the 4th and 5th seasons, it will never fully go away. Before I can go into why the show failed as spectacularly as it did, I have to tell you about how the show was introduced to the audience in the first place, as the showrunners decided to take a very direct and unusual approach with testing the concept. The way they did it was with 2 backdoor pilot episodes that were a part of the real show in Season 4 in order to promote Feds, which would air alongside Season 5. These episodes were Season 4, Episode 19, Simone, and Season 4, Episode 20, Enervo. And this is where we meet the woman that would become the main protagonist in The Rookie Feds, Simone Clark, a middle-aged woman who was trying to become the best FBI agent that she could be, despite her age. She's seen doing the FBI driving test in the beginning of Episode 19 before being called to Los Angeles to help out with a case called Enervo, as she was connected to a suspect of a terror attack because she taught the kid. When there, she meets John Nolan, who was seeing the expertise that Simone brought to the table that nobody else was able to see. And during that ride that her and Nolan shared, they found that they were one and the same, the oldest rookies of their respective agencies who found themselves competing with officers a couple decades younger than them. And while Simone hadn't figured this out yet, Nolan tells her some very sound advice that made him a better officer.
But what you lack in flexibility or the ability to run up a flight of stairs without getting winded, you more than make up for in life experience.
Despite her help on the case, they want her to leave before the interview even starts, but the suspect says that he'll only talk to her. And by talking through their past, he opened up and talked about his role in the bombing. He was commissioned to make 6 detonators that were programmed to go off when they hit specific coordinates. And after said interview, she was on her way, or so the show wanted us to believe. She went off to her dad's house, and her dad was not happy to see her. But despite that, she's let in and they talk. He's willing to find her kid a lawyer. However, he makes it very clear about how disappointed he is that she is training to be a part of the FBI. With his history involving law enforcement though, it does make sense. He was convicted of a crime that he never committed, and so I'm not surprised that he would be upset about the choice. However, she's committed to being a part of the change, to do what's right from the inside. And her dad, despite his objections, tells her that nobody will tell her where she doesn't belong. And that's when she comes back the next day and fights her way into being on the rest of the case, where she succeeds. Through her, they were able to find the connection between the crazy extraterrestrial guy and the bomber, and they started looking for him. They find out about the 5 trucks, and one by one, they attempt to apprehend them. Florida, caught. Idaho, caught. Utah, caught by Smitty, and even Gray was impressed.
Smitty! I take back every negative thing I've ever said about you.
What? You said negative things about me?
All that's left is Kentucky, and Nolan and Simone got that one too. But when they get back to the office, she is back to talking to Fremont. She's able to get more information out of him. Through a picture of the bar that the man would eat and a bit of help from her dad, she was able to identify where the man could be located and found him there. But he beats her down and runs off, forcing her and Nolan to go on a chase after him into the aquarium. They apprehend him, but they have to get him out fast, as Bill August's team is on their way to take him out. The final shootout occurs and everyone is rounded up, and that's how the backdoor pilot episodes end. But this isn't the last time that Simone Clark and the Rookie Feds is involved in the main show. The 4th, 10th, and 21st episodes of both the Rookie Feds' first and only season, as well as the Rookie Season 5, are crossover episodes between the two shows. The 4th episodes are based around the tail end of Rosalind Dyer's reign, with the main show going into the actual death of Rosalind, whereas the Feds episode was based around who sniped her. But then Simone herself appears in the main show episodes The List, which was about the bank robbery, as well as Going Under, which was about infiltrating an illegal firearms operation. Though many would say that her appearances in both of these episodes weren't really required, and they didn't connect the shows nearly as much as the 4th episode crossover. Now that all of this lore has been discussed, why was this show a massive failure? I've been keeping you guys waiting long enough, so now I can finally discuss the reasons that the show failed. Let's start with the obvious one, Simone Clark herself. Look, the actress is good, and she put everything into the role. But unlike Nolan with the LAPD, the FBI is a whole other beast with a much more strict protocol. Her unprofessionalism shown through both shows would have gotten her booted within 10 minutes of the main show's Simone episode. As the guy doing the driving training said, people get fired for having acne. Why wouldn't her blatant procedure breaking cause her to get the boot? Not to mention, her voice turned a lot of people away from her, as well as the show as a whole. When I made my most hated characters video, I had to see what people thought of her specifically, and I found multiple threads dogging on her voice, as well as her personality as a whole. Here's what they had to say. Even though she breaks the stereotype for female FBI agents, both physically and personality-wise, she still seemed so unrealistic and just annoying. It was her voice I couldn't stand. Going all the way back to when she was on Reno 911, Nash's voice has always driven me crazy, and her overly maternal way of speaking to people, calling suspects or witnesses sugar, sweetie, or honey. I mean, that should be grounds for disciplinary measures alone. It's incredibly unprofessional. Interestingly, thanks to Season 8, Episode 5, The Network, we get another tidbit of information that throws the idea of Simone Clark out the window anyways. The age cutoff for joining the FBI is 35, with very few exceptions involving people with extensive law enforcement history. So how the hell was she even hired anyways? I know they only added this into the episode to show that Nolan couldn't move to the FBI, but even in real life, the age cutoff is anywhere between 35 and 38 depending on the division. So that's another strike against her. However, when looking back at this thread again, a few people made a good point that I didn't go through in that previous video. And that was her character isn't actually that bad in a general sense, but rather specifically for an FBI agent. Instead, what if she had been part of the LAPD in the regular show, and someone more qualified had been the main character of Feds? The biggest problem is that the FBI is the elite of the elite, and she is not that. She might be quick-witted and emotionally smart, but that would make you a good patrol officer, not an FBI agent hunting international criminals. She's fine when on The Rookie, and I actually like the scene she's in with Nolan. But on her show, the little bit I watched seemed like she does the opposite of what she's told / ordered to do that goes wrong. Would she have been a better fit on the main show? Let me know in the comments what you think of this. It's hard to imagine her on The Rookie, but perhaps she would have been received a bit better. The second reason was that this show was trying to punch way above its weight. When you have a spinoff like this, it's better to make the spinoff after the first show had already ended. Such as, for example, Georgie and Mandy's first marriage was for young Sheldon. They didn't make the Georgie and Mandy show until young Sheldon was completely finished, and this made it where these shows didn't compete with each other. However, The Rookie and The Rookie Feds were running at the exact same time within days of each other. Not to mention that they're basically the exact same style of writing, filming, and dialogue. Why would people watch The Rookie Feds when they have a more established, more developed show to watch instead? I think they assumed because they had a show that was massively successful, they had a secret formula that they can replicate over and over again. But they didn't. What the original show had is a perfect central character with Nolan, an amazing group of main characters, develop stories and traumas, as well as they have the formula for a continuously revolving door cast, which gives the show unbelievable longevity. Now, we have to address the elephant in the room, which is that ABC and Alexi Hawley are trying this again with the newly announced spinoff The Rookie North, which is basically doing the exact same format that the original show did, which was a middle-aged man joining the Pierce Police Department in Washington, with the only difference being that it takes place in more of a rural area versus a big city like Los Angeles. And again, I think this spinoff is going to fail. I know it has a stacked cast, but like I was talking about just a minute ago, you have no reason to watch The Rookie North when there's an extremely established 8-season long show with over 125 episodes, developed characters, storylines, and the groundwork to continue for years to come. I personally believe this show will go for a season, maybe 2 if they can get decent numbers on the first one, but then they'll ultimately get the axe. Will you be giving The Rookie North a try? Let me know down below. While some characters in The Rookie are meant to be seen as the protagonist who has done nothing wrong, you might be surprised by some of the things your favorite characters have done and gotten away with. In this video, we're going to talk about the times that rookie characters broke the law, starting off with John Nolan. In Season 1, Episode 9, Standoff, a man named Kyle Montgomery broke into Officer Nolan's home. In the previous episode, Time of Death, John answered a call to a convenience store robbery where Alex, Kyle's brother, was shot in the aftermath and subsequently killed in an act of self-protection. Kyle wanted to avenge the death of his brother, resulting in him breaking into Nolan's home, where Lucy was showering after they had a special get-together. Nolan fought off the intruder, and then the police were called. Nolan urged Lucy to leave to keep this all a secret. Afterwards, Nolan was taken to the police station where he was questioned by IA about the break-in. Commander West asked if he was really alone, because Kyle said he heard a voice. Nolan denied any other person being there, claiming he had the TV on. Then when Commander West pulled him aside again and asked why the shower was recently on, he lied again, saying, "I sometimes use the shower as a makeshift humidifier." No consequences ever came out of him lying, and that moment was never mentioned again. In the Season 2 final episode, The Hunt, Nolan suspects that Detective Armstrong is corrupt due to Aaron Cole's last words. Because of their suspicion, but lack of evidence, with Sergeant Gray's permission, Harper and Nolan lure Armstrong out into the middle of nowhere to trace his burner phone. They pinged his burner phone number from the nearest cell tower, but unfortunately, it was a dead end since it had just been activated that day. Afterwards, Nolan went to visit Rosalind, where she informed him there is evidence hidden in Armstrong's house. Following that, Nolan decides to break into Armstrong's house to find the evidence, almost getting caught doing so and not really finding anything. But Nolan eventually gets a call from Armstrong, who admits to Nolan that he was right, and asks Nolan to meet at his house to tell him more, where he then fully confesses and gives an explanation to Nolan on how he's going to pin everything on him. They get into a short gunfight, and Nolan quickly drives back to his own house to find the planted evidence. When he finds the evidence, the police show up. Cut to the next episode in the Season 3 premiere, Consequences, where he calls Wesley, who tells him to bag up the evidence and hide it. So he does exactly that and puts it in the water heater, then throws a fake bag of evidence into his neighbor's yard. Soon after, he surrendered to the police. At the station, he explained he was being framed and tells them everything he needs to know, and tells them everything he knows about Armstrong and his plan. Nolan then convinces Gray to let him go undercover, and he almost gets killed. Then the Durians later betray Armstrong and kill him. As punishment, he got held back in the FTO program for a month and received a letter of reprimand, which would crush any dream of getting any higher position in the department. To finish off on Nolan, in the Season 6 finale episode, Escape Plan, Monica was in Argentina with the kidnapped Blair London, trying to make a deal with Jacob Olmsted, the Swiss everything trafficker. She tries trading Blair to him in return for Eric Ramsey's role, the person trying to get rid of Monica permanently and the guy sleeping with Jacob's wife. Nolan, Harper, and Garza go to Argentina following Monica just to observe and see what her plan is. Once they get to Monica and Jacob's meeting location, they spot Blair being held against her will. Nolan sees no other choice than to intervene, and with no jurisdiction, he drives into the tent where they were meeting at, and Nyla starts shooting while he starts fighting Monica's henchmen, holding Blair captive. They retrieve her and they all leave, with Nolan leaving with a very sore butt. This never resulted in any consequences, even though out of all of the crimes he had done, attacking people in a foreign country where he has no jurisdiction has definitely been the most illegal thing he's carried out. Moving on, we have Tim Bradford in Season 1, Episode 1, Pilot. We are introduced to Tim's ex-wife, Isabel, who, in true addict form, demands Tim give her all his money. Tim is broken and in shambles after seeing his wife in such chaos after only a year since their departure. Out of guilt, Tim tries to give her some money, and she runs away with his whole wallet. She then reappears again in Episode 3, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, where Tim gets a call from the hospital. He shows up to see his wife, who had just overdosed, and catches her trying to leave. He stops her, and they get into a fight where, in the end, she once again runs away. Later on, he takes some Narcan from the police station and goes to Isabel's apartment. Tim and Lucy fight in the shop about who will give her the Narcan, and then they decide it would be better for Lucy to go at first. It is then revealed that Isabel used to be a cop, specifically in the narcotics division. Tim, knowing she was an addict and giving her money, knowing she would spend it on drugs is strange enough. But knowing she was a drug addict when she was a cop is beyond strange. It's illegal. In Season 6, Episode 5, The Vow, it starts with Tim answering a phone call, rushing out of Lucy's apartment, then cutting to him parked outside of a house. An old friend, Mark Greer, hops into Tim's truck, and they start talking about someone named Ray Watkins, who was presumably dead. Ray is someone the two of them knew in the military, and he was in LA to visit his mother who was dying of cancer. While in the middle of their conversation, Mark brings up their promise about killing Ray if he survived, because he had done some very bad things while in the military. Mark is there to make sure that this dead guy was actually dead this time around. After staking out the house until sunrise, they see movement and decide to head to the front door, being let in by Ray's mom, who says her son is dead. Once they make their way inside, Ray shows up and their conversation gives us some more intel as to what exactly happened. He had stole from people in Iraq, along with other bad things. And when he was found out by Bradford and his comrades, they chased him down. Ray found out and sent an airstrike to his location, leading to two of Tim's friends' deaths and what they thought was Ray's death as well. Afterwards, they signed an after-action report, lying so that his wife and daughter could get death benefits. Because of this, if they were to try and turn him in to the proper authorities now, they would also face punishment for their lies, which is why they made that pact with each other to kill him. But Tim was not willing to kill him, while the only thing keeping Mark from killing him is Tim. The next night, Tim goes back to stake out his house again, catching Ray leaving the house and following him. He's trying to catch him doing something illegal so that he can arrest him. Tim does actually catch him doing some illegal things, but I won't go into detail because that's not the focus of this story. Tim did these things on his own accord, lying over and over again. He lied on the after-action report. He lied about his friend's death. He lied to Lucy, his girlfriend. He lied about Mark's plans to kill Ray. And for all of that, his punishment was being kicked out of the Metro team, and as self-punishment, he broke up with Lucy. For the next person, I have Nyla Harper. In Season 2, Episode 6, Fallout, an alert goes off telling the whole city that a ballistic missile is headed for Los Angeles in 30 minutes. Nolan, Wesley, and Jessica are stuck in the courthouse while everyone else meets up at the police station to figure out what to do. Well, almost everyone. Nyla immediately calls her ex, and after he doesn't answer, she goes up and picks up Lila from school, the daughter that she has no custody of. Nyla brings her back to the station, and she promises that there's no more lies. Once they found out the missile alert was a false alarm, Donovan shows up at the police station demanding to know where his child is. And after seeing that she is safe, he blows up at Nyla, asking to have her arrested for kidnapping. Gray, Nolan, and even Lila defend her, which convinces him to drop charges. Meaning, in the end, she had no consequences for kidnapping her own child. I'm not saying she wasn't morally right here, but legally this was bad. In Season 7, Episode 4, Darkness Falling, we are introduced to serial killer Harrison Novak, who kidnaps women, then buries them at what he thought was his own personal burial site. But turns out someone had been hiding their bodies near his to cover up their kills, and wrapping them the same way. But due to Novak's self-righteousness, he immediately denies that the extra bodies were his doing. So another investigation is put in place to find who really put those bodies there. They find out that Novak went to a psychiatric facility named Westview Psychiatric in his youth and decide to investigate there. Lopez and Harper get a warrant for patient and staff records who were there at the time Novak was. They spot an older abandoned part of the facility with the same tarp that both Novak and the unknown killer used to wrap the bodies. They decide to proceed alone, and once inside, they hear a voice scream out. They find him, and Lopez leads him out the building so he can get the medical attention he needs. As Harper ventures deeper, she finds the remains of what looks like a serial killer's torture room. She gets attacked and poked by a needle with a fast-acting, short-term paralytic, but she scares the guy off afterwards. Lopez finds her, and they rush her to the ER. Nyla ends up being alright, but now they know that whoever was down there is the unknown killer. Later on, they bring a skittish man into questioning who might be a possible suspect, Ryan Dearborn. Ryan doesn't seem like someone who could hide that many bodies and not get caught or kill that many people in general. Just when they feel like all the evidence had gone down the drain, Lucy comes to them and tells them that all but one of the victims were covered in hundreds of people's DNA. That one person being a man named Grant, his first kill, a kill that might have been personal. So after doing more researching, Lucy finds out his former employer, Liam Glasser, runs a vending supply company that services facilities all over LA, including Westview. They lure him into the police station to question him with the narrative that Smitty wanted exotic vending machine snacks. But then Ryan confesses. The man knows too much to be innocent, but doesn't seem to have the same personality as the man who attacked Harper. Nyla is set on the killer being Glasser. She then shows up behind his truck and tells him that she knows he's the real killer, threatening him with the force of the entire police department.
So you've gotten away with everything because you moved in the shadows, but now you are in the spotlight, and you will stay there until I find a way to hang these murders around your neck and lock you away forever.
Skip a few episodes ahead, and in Season 7, Episode 8, Wildfire, Liam is back. Selena, Lucy, and Nyla are walking up a trail near Glasser's house when they spot a fire. Harper's focus is on Liam Glasser though, and she does a sweep of his house while they get everyone evacuated. Back at the shelter, they question his wife and kid. The kid said that his dad has a secret brown van, which is immediately proven to be a lie, as they found Glasser driving away from the warehouse in a green Jeep Cherokee on the cameras. His wife finally realizes the truth and tells them where he would go, a house under her mother's name. Once there, Nolan, Penn, Harper, and Lopez show up. While looking through the house, they hear a man screaming for help. Nolan enters a room with a do not enter sign on it and falls through the floor. Miles goes on to find the kidnapped man in the bathroom. And then once Nolan wakes up, he is attacked by Glasser, while Nyla finds Lopez passed out on the floor and helps her up. Then Lopez and Harper find Nolan and they arrest Liam. Now that they're going to court for his murders, his lawyers are using her words against her, and he may not end up being charged with the murders because of what she said, as what she did was very illegal conduct. Those were times that the rookie characters broke the law. There are over 25 characters who have only been in one episode of The Rookie, and today we're going to talk about every single one of them and their stories, starting with Armando de Leon from Season 4, Episode 1, Life and Death, the gangster who was responsible for the murder of Officer Jackson West. In this episode, while trying to get Lopez back from La Figuera, the LAPD finds camera footage of Jackson getting shot in the back while trying to escape. At first, nobody knew who this assailant was, as they made a quick run for it. But after getting some DNA from Jackson's body, they found out that it was De Leon. Lieutenant Gray tracks him down, and while he tries to flee, he eventually surrenders. But he knew that Jackson wouldn't approve of this, and instead he arrested him. He then got charged for conspiracy and murder. Let's go back a season and talk about Katie Barnes from Season 3, Episode 11, New Blood, the ex-military who gave policing a try before she was ready. Barnes joined the LAPD right after leaving the Army and was assigned to Tim Bradford. From the beginning, it was clear that she was still stuck in military mode, as she would call suspects enemies and being hostile towards one of them off the rip. Bradford treated her differently and gave her a more hands-on and gentle approach. Lucy was unhappy with this until Tim explained himself and how he handles his rookies.
Why are you being so nice to her?
Officer Barnes won't wear perfume because she's still worried it'll give away her position. And part of her is still waging a war in Afghanistan. You are a kind and insightful person. You see the good in people.
Eventually, Barnes realizes that policing isn't for her at this point in her life, and she resigns on her first day of patrol. On to a more recent character, we have Harrison Novak from Season 7, Episode 4, Darkness Falling, a serial killer whose reign ended after a car accident gave him away. In the episode, there was a multiple car accident on the highway, and while trying to find any evidence of someone being under the influence, they find a woman in the back of one of the cars, and they note that the car is Harrison Novak's. They raided his house and found pictures of all of Novak's victims. He knew that he was in some deep water, so he called Wesley, his previous lawyer, but he didn't know that Wesley moved to being a district attorney, and so Lopez and Harper were able to listen in. After trying to go out with a bang by trying to kill a sorority, and failing, he was arrested and he confessed to where he buried all of his victims. However, while doing so, they find out about bodies of another serial killer who would end up being identified as Liam Glasser. Now we have Bill August from Season 4, Episode 20, Nervo, a corrupt CIA agent who was responsible for the entire operation. The uncovering of his operation was all because of a Russian CIA operative named Ilya Sakharov, who fled to the US after being arrested for treason. He was also responsible for the kidnapping of Kate Hill, who was able to unravel August's operation. Eventually, Simone and Nolan track him down and they apprehend him. Moving on to Troy Hoffman from Season 5, Episode 12, Death Notice, the fake doctor who was out for the blood of Oscar Hutchinson. After hearing about how Oscar was donating a kidney to his daughter, Hoffman saw a chance to get revenge for the stabbing of his brother. However, he didn't know that the LAPD was keeping close guard of Oscar, so he had to come up with another plan. He captured the doctor's husband and son and told Dr. Bernard that Oscar had to die during surgery or her family would. However, he didn't play his alias well enough, as Selena caught onto it and identified him as Troy Hoffman. With the help of Nolan, they detain him. Hoffman remained smug though, saying that Oscar had to die or they would kill her family, and going there to save them would be too late. He was wrong about that though, because the LAPD did save them and Hoffman was arrested. Do any of you remember Beth Veston from Season 5, Episode 1, Double Down? She was the attorney of Rosalind Dyer, who was beaming from future prospects that she would get from representing her. But that was just a facade, as she actually was there to help Rosalind escape by pretending to be her and diverting the police, as Rosalind was wearing a blonde wig and got away in the opposite direction. While being interviewed, it's clear that she was too far gone, as she was cutting her arms on the table, and when they went over to check on her, they saw Rosalind's name in her arm. She tells them that people are going to die, and she was right, as we find out that Veston did this in exchange for Rosalind to kill her parents, and Rosalind does this. Veston is then arrested for her crimes afterwards. One of the wildest one-time character stories comes from Corey Harris from Season 3, Episode 7, True Crime. He was a former child actor who formed a religious group that starts with a C, calling himself Jedediah the Prophet, and he used young and impressionable students from his acting classes as his followers. While live streaming, someone breaks into his house, and while Corey tries to get away and hide while calling the police, the intruder does find him and kills him. What's crazy is the LAPD ended up finding pieces of Harris around the house, as the killer spread them around. And the eeriest part of all this, the live stream was still on, for all of his followers to watch. But let's talk about his ex-fiancée, Charlotte Luster, from the same episode. She was the co-star and childhood sweetheart of Corey Harris's character on Paul's Place, and they stayed in each other's lives for years after, dating and getting engaged in real life. About halfway through the episode though, she is suspected of the murder of Corey Harris, as they couldn't locate her after his death. However, it's later theorized that she was actually the one who was killed by Corey or his mother. Unfortunately, no evidence ever came up for this, and her death remains a mystery. Now we're headed to the present day, and we met a character recently that was long overdue, Ruth Harper, Nyla's mom from Season 7, Episode 17, Mutiny and the Bounty. We are finally introduced to her after she calls Nyla for help during a supposed burglary, but it actually was just her getting an eviction notice. Angela and Nyla dig around and find out that Ruth was a target of fraud, and they, along with Lopez's mom, work together to get the fraudster put behind bars. They catch the fraudster Priscilla in the act after Lopez's mom acts like another target. And at the end of the episode, we see Ruth going through a family album with Nyla, apologizing to her for being gullible, but Nyla assures her that it's just her seeing the best in people. Next, we're talking about Livy from Season 7, Episode 12, April Fools, the social media manager who sent the entire city into the purge. In the beginning of the episode, we find out about her because of the April Fool's jokes she was making on the LAPD's social media pages. These jokes were causing civilian confusion, and so Tim fired her and told her to leave. She decides to get back at them by posting that all crime is legal for 3 hours, and LA has its own purge. Property was destroyed, people were killed, and so much more. Eventually, after Livy calls the police for help, they save her, and then they arrest her for what she did. My favorite moment from her episode was this.
I really didn't think that anyone was going to take this seriously. I'm so sorry.
Let's jump to the next episode and talk about two people from the same episode, AJ Knox and Sean Larson from Season 7, Episode 13, 3 Billboards. AJ is a football star who used to play with Officer Penn in college, and Larson is AJ's friend and assistant. We meet AJ as he passes by the crime scene Miles is at, and they catch up. Then AJ offers Miles to come to his party that night, and he agrees. At the party, Sean Larson is stealing his jewelry, and we find out that AJ knows but doesn't care. But then something happened that would make him care. The next morning, they're all just hanging out and Sean offers smoothies to everyone. And while Penn declines, AJ and his bouncer accept. These smoothies were poisoned though, and we find out that Larson is an insider in the robbery of AJ's house. Penn saves AJ, and with the help of Lucy and Selena, they take down all the robbers and apprehend Sean Larson. At the end, Penn is offered $300,000 a year to be private security for AJ, and he respectfully declines. But Penn does score some season tickets from AJ for Tim, so that's nice. Let's take a trip back a few seasons before to talk about Claire Ivy from Season 4, Episode 2, 5 Minutes, the serial robber who has avoided getting arrested for years. While on patrol together, Lucy and Nolan meet her after pulling her over and finding out that she's a person of interest. This is because of many heists that they could never get her connected to. They let her on her way, but tell her that she's under supervision, so she should leave town. She tells them that she knows this song and dance and tells them she has a plan and they'll never figure it out. And then she leaves. Nolan tried to keep tabs on her and stop her, but all of these efforts failed and she got away. Her plan was to steal a bunch of jewelry from one of the trucks for the gala, and while she made her move, the LAPD managed to stop her. She tried to escape, but she was arrested and was hauled off to not be seen again. Now we're going to talk about Richard Dormer from Season 5, Episode 8, The Collar, the man behind the collars that would blow up after a slow 43 minutes. He broke into his sister's coworker's house and held her at gunpoint. Then he made her put on a collar and forced her to drive around while recording herself. Unfortunately, the LAPD couldn't save her in time, but they did find out about another one of Richard's victims, another company worker named Creighton Mitchell, who heard about the death and was terrified. Luckily, he got out of the car and removed the collar with shears, and that's when they found out about the timer. Lastly, they find the CEO with a collar on too, but Nolan and Selena go to save him. This is where Selena asks which wire to cut and Richard says blue. However, she knew that he was lying and told Nolan to cut the red one. This works, and Richard's plan fails. He is then taken into custody. These next two are a blast from the past, starting with Cecilia Olivo from Season 1, Episode 9, Standoff, the girlfriend of Marcus Vance. We are introduced to her while they're trying to take down Marcus, as they search her apartment and try to find him. They don't find him there, and Cecilia reveals that she is his girlfriend, but she didn't find out about his criminal activity until she got pregnant. That's when the shootouts begin, and the stress from them causes her water to break, and she starts going into labor with the help from Lucy. The baby is born during the shootout, but Vance breaks in wanting to take the baby. Luckily, Nolan and a team come save them and Vance is arrested. Cecilia is checked over and she goes on with her life as normal with her brand new baby. The other early bird is Alex Montgomery from Season 1, Episode 8, Time of Death, Nolan's first kill. While on patrol, Nolan and Bishop find two robbers in a gas station, one being Alex. He makes a run for it and Nolan follows him. Eventually, Alex runs into a random house and has a family put at gunpoint. He then runs upstairs, and before he can make an escape, Alex gets caught. Nolan warns him to drop the gun, but Alex whips around with the gun in his hand still pointed at Nolan. As soon as Nolan sees this, he has a gut reaction and shoots Alex. where he dies on the scene. This sends Nolan into a spiral, leading to the investigation that temporarily paused his career. Up next on our list, we got Tom Bradford from Season 4, Episode 9, Breakdown, the abusive father of Tim Bradford. Technically, he was mentioned in the episode before, where Jennifer, Lucy, and Tim talked about Tom and his past with Tim. It's revealed that Tom is in hospice, slowly dying. While Jennifer forgave him, Tim did not. But in the next episode, we actually see him when Tim pays a visit to him due to an old case involving a family friend, Monica Okoa, whose husband was murdered. Tim confronts Tom with this, and Tom reveals that he murdered Frank and staged it, since Tom and Monica were having an affair, and he helped Monica cover up the loose ends. Tim arrested Monica and then came back. And instead of arresting him, he gives Tom a piece of his mind and then leaves him to die a slow and painful death. A few episodes later, we meet Jane Becker from Season 4, Episode 15, Hit List. She starts out working with another assassin to take out jurors who were on the Kellen Meyer case. We'll get back to him later though. But while on the job, she runs into Lieutenant Gray at a parking garage. She tries to distract him at first, but he sees her weapon. She then tries to kill him, and while she did seriously injure him, she couldn't get the job done, as he was able to retaliate and she was shot in the chest. And while paramedics do come for both of them and they were taken to the hospital, she ended up passing away. This next name might make some of you shiver. Cole Midas from Season 1, Episode 16, Greenlight, the son of a major gang leader who ended the life of Captain Anderson. He was introduced as the son of Leonard Midas, leader of the Southern Front, but also the baby daddy of a woman that Nolan arrested earlier and accidentally ripped her dress. He was infuriated with this and put a green light on him. After a while Nolan and Anderson were on a call, Cole ambushed them and tied them to chairs next to a swimming pool. After some back and forth, Cole pushes Anderson in, and while she escapes this, Cole shoots her while escaping himself, and this shot ends up killing her. He knew he was cooked after this, so he tried to flee the city, but his dad gave up his location and he was promptly arrested by Nolan, with guns pointed all around him. He was then later charged for kidnapping and the murder of Captain Zoe Anderson. Moving on from Cole, we get to Jerry McGrady from Season 4, Episode 6, Poetic Justice, an older cop who just wasn't ready to retire. Gray wanted McGrady to retire, and he appointed Tim to make it happen. So Tim asks McGrady if he wants to come along for a ride along. Initially, Tim just wanted to use this as a way to convince him to retire, but then a case came up and McGrady had a connection to it because of a friend who died long ago. They find the gold and stop a criminal who was trying to get it. After this case, McGrady decides that this is a great way to end his career, and he retired on his own after almost 44 years of service. Now we're heading to one of the documentary episodes with Lisa Miller from Season 5, Episode 18, Double Trouble, the best friend of Sava and the affair partner of Jake. In the beginning of the episode, when Jake is released from prison, Sava and Lisa are there to greet him. But later on, Jake is found dead in a dumpster. After a bit of digging, the LAPD find out that Jake and Lisa were having an affair, and Lisa wanted Jake all to himself. For some reason, I don't know what she saw in him, but that's besides the point. But Lisa couldn't handle that Jake was with Sava, and so she tried to run both of them off the road. She failed at this though, so she ends up killing Jake by just shooting him in the head instead. When Lisa was confronted by the LAPD, she shot Nolan, but because of his vest, he ended up being okay. Lisa was then arrested for the murder of Jake and the attempted murder of Nolan. Next up, we got Mrs. Mitchelson from Season 5, Episode 7, Crossfire, the woman who had a lot to hide from the LAPD. She was introduced when Nolan and Selena told her about the death of Alvin, her husband. They found out that Alvin was a con artist who caused a lot of deaths, and he would have ended up in prison very soon if it wasn't for the people going for the kill before that. After some more work, the LAPD found out that Alvin was actually poisoned, and that's what caused his death. After interviewing Mrs. Mitchelson, she came clean about doing it because him going to prison wasn't going to give her his life insurance. She then was apprehended and we haven't seen her again. Let's circle back to Kellen Myers from Season 4, Episode 15, Hit List, the corrupt court officer who sold the list of jurors. The LAPD figured out about Myers after a raid, and he was brought in and interrogated by Lopez. He initially denied that he was ever involved, and he was going to plead the fifth. But Lopez tells him that she knows about the list that he provided, and that they saw that he was paid off by Rubio after looking through his finances. After all of this, he did confess, but he also assured them that he had no idea that people were going to die. He thought it was just going to be used to scare people off. Byers was then arrested for accessory to the murders. Let's head to the finale of Season 4 with Gabrielle Navarre. In Season 4, Episode 22, Day in the Hole, the officer from the border. After Nolan was transferred to the Frontera Police Department for a week, he meets Gabrielle, who really needed help since the chief was absent. We don't see much of her until near the end of the episode when everyone is battling the group of criminals that come in. Afterwards, they arrested everyone, and Gabrielle thanked Nolan and the others for the help. Then Nolan went back to LA and never went back. And now to talk about the most recent one-time character, Rena Davitt from Season 7, Episode 18, The Good, the Bad, and the Oscar. The woman that Penn went on a date with. Penn matches with her on a dating site and they meet at a restaurant. Things seem like they're going well until Penn notices the 7 on her necklace. He leaves the table to call Selena, where she finds out that she's associated with the Eastern Front, and he makes a run for it. The Eastern Front starts to go after him, and he pushes her out of the way while he makes his exit. While the gang keeps going after him, Rena doesn't, and we never get to see what happened to her after, but it's likely that she got arrested along with the rest of them. That was all of the one-time characters that have been on The Rookie. In this video, I'll be telling you 107 more facts about anything and all things The Rookie. Sit back and enjoy. Starting off with the main character, John Nolan, played by actor Nathan Fillion, who is a hugely successful actor with a wide filmography. Because of this, he was honored with an area in Edmonton, Canada, that was named the Nathan Fillion Civilian Pavilion. The origins of this came from radio personality Lauren Hunter's petition in 2019 to build a small building downtown that was named after the actor. The petition amassed over 37,000 signatures, including Fillion's other castmate John Cena and Margot Robbie. In May 2024, Nathan Fillion visited the parklet named after him and posted his reaction to Instagram. In addition to the 3 Canadian main actors, several recurring actors are also from Canada. This includes Brandon J. McLaren, who plays Elijah Stone, and Curry Graham, who plays Nolan's friend Ben McGree. Before The Rookie started, Richard T. Jones, who plays Lieutenant Gray, and Nathan Fillion both appeared on Santa Clarita Diet. Jones also plays a police officer on that show named Rick, while Fillion plays a zombie named Gary West, who was subsequently recast after Nathan Fillion left, due to scheduling issues as Fillion chose to prioritize his role in The Rookie. Prior to shooting Season 1, the cast was put through a rapid version of police academy training for 2 weeks, during which they were taught how to shoot, drive, clear rooms, and handcuff, among a bunch of other things. Before shooting any subsequent season, the cast would have a quick refresher on all of these skills. Alexi Hawley considers the show a character show masquerading as a cop show. This is because the show differs from other cop shows, as the show aims to focus more on the relationship of the characters rather than exclusively being a crime of the week show. Hawley also considers the theme of the whole show to be second chances. This theme is very evident in many of the characters, especially Nolan and Harper. Nolan's storyline focuses on his second chance with his professional life as he ventures into a new career, while Harper's explores her getting a second chance in her personal life as she reconnects with her daughter and eventually grows a new family with James Murray. Despite being the creator of the show, Alexi Hawley only made his debut as a director in the Season 4 finale Day in the Hole. Nathan Fillion and Eric Winter both started their acting careers in soap operas. Fillion starred in One Life to Live as Joey Buchanan in 1994, while Winter played Rex Brady from 2002 to 2005. Despite already having one unsuccessful spin-off, Eric Winter, who plays Tim Bradford, has expressed further desire for more spin-offs. Eric goes on to say, "It would be fun to see what they have in store. If they actually spin off a character from the original, or if they just bring in somebody new. I don't know, but I think another spin-off could be a lot of fun, and I hope it does happen to build the universe." Luckily for Eric, it was reported on December 5th, 2024, that a second spin-off of the show would be developed. According to a Variety article, the show will be set in Washington, and it will follow a male cop who is stepping into a new phase of life in his second act. The show's theme song is called Kings and Queens by Chen. The title card of the show is known to change depending on the tone of the episode. For example, in the 100th episode, a section of letters in the word rookie were illuminated to reveal 100. In the roll call room, the windows have hinges in the middle, and the windows are tilted to avoid showing the crew members in the reflection. The show uses many real-life police techniques. For example, in Season 5, Episode 10, The List, when James and Nyla are caught in a bank robbery, Nyla explains how to describe a suspect using the acronym GROUT.
I need you to say the word grout. Gender, race, over, under, task.
Male, white, black jacket, dark pants, and his task, killing us.
The show has a lot of continuity issues, with one of them being the look of the briefing room. For example, the board in the briefing room changed from a whiteboard in Season 1 to a blackboard in Season 2. Additionally, the show has some factual issues as well. For example, in both Lopez and Harper's pregnancy storylines, both characters worked their regular duty while they were pregnant. However, in real life, female officers are often assigned to desk duty when pregnant and would never be allowed to work full duty. When Nolan is asked if becoming a cop was his plan B, he says more like plan D, astronaut, construction, then cop. The astronaut line is a reference from Nathan Fillion's role as Captain Malcolm Reynolds in the show Firefly. Some of the show's storylines have been inspired by real-life events. For example, in Season 7, Episode 16, The Return, it features an influencer who crashes a speeding car into a reservoir while live streaming. This plotline was inspired by influencer Jack Doherty, who has a history of filming himself being a public nuisance. About 6 months before the episode aired, Doherty had crashed a sports car while live streaming. Due to laws surrounding the impersonation of emergency vehicles, the police cars are detailed on the side with the words "to serve and protect" to distinguish them from actual police cars. Lopez actually could have had a completely different career. She attended engineering classes in college, but decided to drop out because she realized that she just didn't like it. The cast have called Richard T. Jones the biggest prankster on set. In the episode entitled Real Crime, a photo of Lieutenant Gray as a rookie is shown. However, this photo is actually a promotional photo from a different project, where Richard played Sergeant Jonah Cole, an NYPD officer. Lieutenant Gray is believed to be descended from the famous Haitian liberator Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Despite being comedic relief, the character Smitty is fairly realistic to a lot of stations, especially as the character is a cop who only wants to do low-stake jobs and rarely fires their weapon. Over the course of the show, some funny and interesting facts have been revealed about Smitty. For example, he is the leader of the QAnon movement, with his alias being Q. Brent Huff, who plays Officer Smitty, has made the most appearances of any guest character. Out of 126 episodes, Smitty has appeared in 53 of them. On the other side of the spectrum, Katie O'Brien played new rookie Katie Barnes in one episode of the show. Not many people know that O'Brien used to be an officer with the Carmel Police Department in Carmel, Indiana. Kelly Clarkson was invited onto the show by Nathan Fillion during an episode of The Kelly Clarkson Show. Despite confessing to be a bad actor, Clarkson has stated that The Rookie is one of her favorite shows. Therefore, she agreed to appear in the pre-credit scene of Season 5, Episode 12, Death Notice.
Take a look at it.
Wesley Evers' actor, Sean Ashmore, was originally brought on as a temporary love interest for Angela. However, his character's popularity, as well as his chemistry with Alyssa Diaz, encouraged the writers to eventually promote him to a main cast member from Season 3 onwards. Speaking of Lopez, some fans have pointed out a missed opportunity by not referring to Evers and Lopez as lovers instead of Lopez. To pass the time in between filming, the actors sing along to the radio in their cars. Sean Ashmore and Derek Augustine, who plays Officer Miles Penn, both have an identical twin brother, with Sean Ashmore's twin Aaron similarly being an accomplished actor. Aaron is currently playing Gil in the Netflix show Ginny and Georgia. The teasing and competitive nature of Tim and Lucy's relationship was brought about when the writers noticed a similar dynamic between Eric Winter and Melissa O'Neill. By the time that Nolan graduated, Tim and Lucy were the only original TO and rookie pair that were still around. Throughout the first season, Nolan, Chen, and West were constantly being reminded that one of 3 rookies wash out. Lopez even goes as far to say, odds are either you, Chen, or Nolan won't be here in a year. Little over a year later, West is killed in the line of duty. Before becoming a training officer, Nolan originally wanted to become a detective. While this desire shifts to him becoming a TO, the show found a way to honor this original desire, as during the Season 7 finale, John is temporarily promoted to detective for 48 hours. The term BOOT is an acronym for barely out of training. On their first day together, Bradford taunts Chen by saying that he's been shot and she needs to know where they are to call for help. This foreshadows the very next day when he actually gets shot and Chen needs to radio for help. Bradford's taunting of rookies is quite common between training officers, as a way of preparing rookies for the unpredictability of the job as well as a hazing ritual. Eric Winter considered becoming a firefighter during a break in his acting career. Tim Bradford has the habit of holding a door open for other people, but this habit wasn't scripted. It's just a trait that Eric Winter does in real life. Casting directors were hesitant to see Eric Winter for the role of Tim Bradford, fearing that he was too nice to portray such a tough character. But Alexi Hawley saw his audition and he believes that Winter was right for the job, as he was able to depict Bradford's hidden vulnerabilities underneath his tough persona. Rosalind Dyer isn't Annie Wersing's first experience playing a serial killer, as she also played a serial killer on Nathan Fillion's other show, Castle. As well as playing an officer on The Rookie, Nathan Fillion is also known for appearing in huge superhero films such as Guardians of the Galaxy. On top of that, Nathan Fillion has starred with Marcia Monroe, who plays Isabel Bradford in The Rookie, in Uncharted, a live-action fan film. Fans can look forward to seeing Nathan Fillion as Green Lantern on July 11, 2025, in James Gunn's new Superman film. Speaking of superheroes, Liseth Chavez has also been a part of a superhero series, Legends of Tomorrow. Throughout the first season, Nolan's training officer Talia Bishop's primary arc focused on her desire to become a detective as soon as possible. However, following Afton's departure from the show after season 1, the writers instead used a similar storyline for Angela Lopez, eventually allowing her to become a detective in season 3. Nolan's new training officer, Nyla Harper, often uses her experiences to guide her rookie. This is shown when Nyla attempts to help Lucy deal with her trauma after her kidnapping ordeal, revealing that she was assaulted by her case officer while she was undercover. Before appearing in The Rookie, 3 of the main actors played love interests of one another. Surprisingly, Eric Winter played the love interest for Mechia Cox, who played Nyla Harper. The two appeared in the show Secrets and Lies, playing Nell Oliver and Amanda Warner. Eric also played the interest of Jenna Dewan's character in the TV show Witches of East End. On top of this, Cox and Winter appeared in Strawberries and Cream Part 1, but the two of them never shared any screen time. Creator Alexi Hawley is also known for creating other crime shows such as State of Affairs and The Recruit, both of which following CIA agents instead of police officers. Melissa O'Neill didn't have her driver's license when she booked The Rookie. Therefore, she was encouraged by producers to get her license as they couldn't allow her to drive on the show until she got her license. Melissa O'Neill has also landed a bunch of roles in iconic musicals, such as the 2012 Broadway revival of Jesus Christ Superstar, as well as Les Miserables. During the first season, Melissa O'Neill lived in an Airbnb, as she stated that she would only move to Los Angeles if she got work. Eventually, she moved permanently to LA for the show's second season. A running gag in the show is having a character request to chat with someone on a backup channel, and everyone would switch over to that channel to eavesdrop. Eric Winter is the only actor who is always wearing a vest under his uniform. The other actors only have them on when the scene requires it, due to the heaviness of the vest, but Winter requested to wear it to help with the authenticity of the character. Now that's commitment. This authenticity can sometimes cause problems for the show. For example, when shooting on location around Los Angeles, the actors are typically mistaken for real-life police officers by members of the public. To avoid this, during their breaks, they will take off their duty belt and cover their uniform with a jacket. The green shotgun that they get from the kit room is specifically designated for non-lethal ammunition such as beanbag rounds. Leah Harper, Nyla's daughter, is played by Mechia Cox's actual daughter. Liseth Chavez, who plays Selena Juarez, also played a police officer in Chicago PD. She appears on the 7th season of the show, playing Officer Vanessa Rojas. Selena's nickname, Ms. Cleo, is a reference to the TV psychic of the same name. While Liseth was 33 during filming, her character Selena Juarez was 25 when she joined the LAPD. During one of Chavez's first scenes, instead of stating her character's name as Selena Juarez, she mistakenly says Selena Gomez instead, causing the cast and crew to burst out with laughter. One of the show's writers, Frederick Cotto, was an officer for 18 years, and even became a sergeant for internal affairs. Cotto worked undercover for many years, and his experience undercover has inspired many of the undercover storylines. The cold open of Season 1, Episode 7, The Ride-Along, has a girl named Cadence Patton fulfill her acting dream as part of her Make-A-Wish. In the episode, she plays a fictional version of herself who gets to be a cop for a day. Lucy jumping from her car to a pickup truck to apprehend a criminal in the season 6 finale was based upon an actual event by one of the writers who was a former cop. David Rowden, the show's stunt coordinator, has been nominated for a Primetime Emmy 3 times. The death of Captain Anderson was one of the show's saddest moments, and she had become a fan favorite due to her supporting Nolan in the first season. But the storyline was ultimately written because the writers wanted to depict the seriousness and unpredictability of police work and show the real dangers involved. Harper's initial nickname for Nolan was 5%, as she received a 5% pay bump for becoming a training officer. Furthermore, when Harper is assigned to train Aaron Thorson, she nicknames him 5 Minutes. This is because 5 minutes is how long she thinks he'll last before quitting the program. Bradford also nicknames Tamara as Chen's puppy, due to how Chen helped her get back on her feet. In return, Tamara nicknames Tim Officer Zaddy due to his attractive appearance. Jenna Dewan plays Bailey, which happens to also be the name of her character's cat in The Resident. As actress Jenna Dewan is an accomplished dancer in real life, the writers decided to make reference to her background. During Season 4, Episode 16, Real Crime, it is revealed that Bailey was a background dancer for the fictional group Flex and Flow. Nolan has the highest hostage count at 14. His latest abduction involves being captured by Oscar Hutchinson in the Season 7 finale. During raid scenes, the background officers are often played by actual cops. None of the uniformed officers in the series wear shooting brass on their uniforms. These are medals that officers wear that represent their shooting abilities. There is a massive plot hole in the show that are involving the documentary episodes. Since the officers are appearing in these documentaries, this would mean that they would be unable to do undercover work. But the show ignores this fact and continues to produce these documentaries anyways. The Season 7 documentary episode marks the 100th appearance for Mechia Cox as Nyla Harper. In the first few episodes of Season 6, Aaron Thorson refers to a friend of his as Little Gherkin. This is the real-life name for an artist who has produced one amateur hip-hop song named The Price is Wrong. The Rookie has welcomed many stars from Nathan Fillion's previous shows. During a Comic-Con panel, Fillion revealed one previous co-star who would like to appear in The Rookie. He revealed that he would love it if his Firefly co-star, Gina Torres, would appear on the show. Torres has also expressed interest in appearing on the show, and Alexi Hawley has gone as far as to state that if Gina came on board, he'd have her and Nathan interact on the show. The Rookie has also welcomed 85 crew members, including directors, writers, and producers, who have collaborated on Castle in the first 2 seasons of the show. The most notable example is Mark Gordon, who worked as a producer on both shows. Like their characters, Eric Winter and Derek Augustine both played football in high school. The Season 7 premiere marked a huge accomplishment for the show, as The Rookie scored a new all-time high for episode views on streaming, based on the first 7 days of viewing across all platforms. Madeline Coughlin, who plays Abigail, is also a writer for the show. Lucy Chen is multilingual, as through the course of the show, Chen is shown speaking Spanish and Cantonese. Additionally, in the episode 5 Minutes, she mentions that she taught herself French to be able to follow Aaron Thorson's trial. Tim's dog Kojo is played by Macklin, and he is the same dog who appeared in other shows such as Modern Family and Young Sheldon. After over 50 years of police shows that feature internal affairs officers, The Rookie chose to take a different approach to portraying internal affairs within police work. The episode Consequences features Nolan being investigated by internal affairs. While internal affairs is often shown as the enemy of police officers, the show highlights the complexity of them and their role in regulating the actions of police officers. The episodes Under Siege and Greenlight are tied for the highest rated episode of The Rookie, at 9.0 on IMDb. The Rookie Feds, however's highest rated episode is only 7.4, showing why the show got canceled. Despite Feds being canceled, characters such as Matthew Garza have continued to appear in the main show. James Murray and Simone Clark knew each other prior to the events of The Rookie. The two met in high school but lost contact after Simone left for college. The Rookie's Instagram has approximately 1 million followers to date. Eric Winter has a podcast with his wife, Rosalind Sanchez, called He Said Ayadio. Patrick Kelleher, who played Seth Ridley, first encountered the show through the viral TikTok of Daddy Cop by Xander Hawley. Season 7 saw the return of Xander Hawley as Raj Bronson. Outside the show, Xander is a talented musician who currently has about 500,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. Many fans have praised the show for its portrayal of Jackson West as a gay character, stating that it was natural and an example of positive representation. However, since West's departure, there has not been any other examples of LGBTQ+ representation on the show. Hopefully, as the show goes on, there will be more opportunities to represent LGBTQ+ experiences. The cold openings of the show usually feature Nolan on patrol, encountering bizarre and funny situations. The show has experimented with storytelling using various cameras such as body cams, dash cams, shop cams, and phone cameras. St. Vincent's Medical Center is used as the setting for Shaw Memorial Hospital in the show. However, after Grace Sawyer's exit, the hospital isn't ever mentioned again. The majority of the cops on the show have Apple phones, while antagonists such as Monica Stevens use Samsung products. This is often a form of unconscious branding, which is typically used in many films and TV shows. Alexi Hawley has hinted at a few potential storylines for the upcoming Season 8. Some include the next romantic chapter for Chenford, a new role for Wesley as District Attorney, and what Monica Stevens' return means for the LAPD. While an official return has yet to be announced, ABC has revealed that The Rookie will be a part of the mid-season slate. This means that Season 8 will likely premiere in January 2026. With that long of a wait, make sure to subscribe and leave a like on this video to see more content about The Rookie. Until then, thanks for watching.